Chapter 1. Test specimen number 24 has been injected with Valkyrie solution. Survival time, 2 minutes and 45 seconds. Time of death, 4:22 a.m. I'm the only one at home. Who's talking? Han Xiao suddenly opened his eyes, and the first thing he saw was a blinding white light. The familiar game cabin door was gone, and in its place was a pure white ceiling. The surrounding white walls had a cold metallic texture, and it was filled with a sci-fi vibe. The room was decorated like an intensive care unit. He was lying on a metal table, and his bare upper body was connected to several wires. The skin on his back was touching the metal, and the coldness penetrated his heart. Beside him were a few people in white coats who looked like researchers, and they looked like they had seen a ghost. Didn't I just accept the client's request to level up a new account? I chose a normal opening. What is this place? Han Xiao had a terrible headache, and his mind was in a mess. It was as if a large amount of information had been stuffed into his mind. The last thing he remembered was that he had just accepted a leveling request to level up a new character in Galaxy. Then he seemed to smell a thick smell of burnt protein. Hurry up and inform Madame Hella. The test subject is alive. Call the guards. Come and control the test subject immediately. The few people in white coats were shouting. Han Xiao did not understand their language, but he could understand what they were saying. The words test subject, survival time, and guards made him feel very uneasy. There were hurried footsteps outside the door. Someone was quickly approaching. Should I stay here and do not move, or should I run? After a moment of hesitation, Han Xiao decisively chose the latter. Waiting for death was not in his character. He turned around and tore off all the wires connected to his body. He staggered toward the door of the laboratory. The surrounding people in white coats hurriedly backed away and did not stop him. Bang! Outside the door was a long white corridor. At both ends of the corridor were more than 10 guards in black combat uniforms with electric batons. Han Xiao recognized the half-sapling symbol on the left chest of their uniforms and gasped. The Germinal Organization of Version 1. Zero Blue Star? Wasn't it already destroyed? One of the guards swung his electric baton. Han Xiao instinctively raised his hand to block, but the pain of the electric shock made his whole body tremble. His bones felt like they were about to crack, and half of his body was numb. This pain sensation is 100%. Han Xiao was shocked. The upper limit of pain regulation in Galaxy was 40%. Exceeding 40% would cause damage to the player's nerves. The game cabin had the function to monitor the player's vital signs. With such a malfunction, the connection should have been forcibly disconnected. What's going on? Why is there something wrong with the gaming pod that was just replaced 7 years ago? F***CK. The maintenance workers who came to me a few days ago only charged me 300 renminbi and promised that there would be no problems within half a year. They are not reliable at all. I will call the customer service later and ask for a refund. More than a dozen strong guards swarmed up. Han Xiao experienced the feeling of being surrounded by big men. He was escorted to a small, empty, dark room. The guards locked the door and left. It was pitch black, and he was the only one left in the room. Han Xiao grimaced in pain and rubbed his wrist to regain his strength. His head started to hurt again, and a huge amount of information gushed out. After a while, Han Xiao finally figured out what had happened. I've transmigrated to Galaxy? Han Xiao's eyes widened in surprise. Galaxy was an immersive holographic game with servers all over the world. At its peak, the number of people online at the same time was close to 60 million. There is no need to doubt the severity of the population expansion in 2060. The background of the game was the universe of stars. The map and scenes were automatically formed by the latest generation of photon processors. It was unbelievably huge and could accommodate hundreds of millions of players online at the same time without any burden. Countless guilds and corporations were farming for gold and running maps and dungeons. A piece of top-grade equipment could be sold for hundreds of thousands of USD. A popular game had to be very good in terms of balance. Not only could it ensure that ballers who were willing to spend money had a certain advantage, but it would also not let the advantage be so big that casual players would feel unfair. The most important way to maintain balance was to increase the game's competitiveness and technology. Galaxy was no exception. It had also given birth to derivatives such as professional players and professional leagues. At this point, you might think that I was going to talk about how awesome and legendary Han Xiao used to be as a professional player. Of course not. Although Han Xiao relied on games to make a living, the words professional player had nothing to do with him. He was the kind of person who was hated by the majority of players and did not have a studio. As a veteran of Galaxy, Han Xiao had experienced all the changes of the game and had a small reputation. He was always in the top 100 of the Huaxia experts list and was ranked 47th in the latest issue. Logically speaking, with his strength, he was more than qualified to be a professional player. However, he was just a substitute. We'll talk about the reason later. Germinal Organization, Galaxy version 1.0, one of the newbie planets, Blue Star. Han Xiao muttered to himself. Before he transmigrated, Galaxy had been in operation for more than 10 years. The version 1.0 incident had long become history. Did he go back in time? Han Xiao's expression was solemn. Does that mean I can't get back the $300? Slap. Han Xiao gave himself a slap. I've already transmigrated. Why would I want a refund? Am I an idiot? There seemed to be some missing memories in his mind. He did not know what his original body had experienced, and even his name was not clear. He only remembered some general knowledge about this world, such as the time. He was in the game's Galaxy calendar year 687, and the official open beta was in 688. In the era of version 1.0, the Federation of Light, Crimson Dynasty, and Arcane Church were still maintaining the peace that had lasted for tens of thousands of years since the end of the exploration era. This silver revolutionary army had yet to be formed, and the calamity of the supers was still lingering on a desolate planet. The flickering world had yet to be born, and the World Tree civilization had yet to invade the unexplored universe. The Shattered Star Ring, that planet Aquamarine, was still idling at the edge of the visible universe. In order to maintain the game's appeal, Galaxy had borrowed from a game called Yamaguchi Mountain from many years ago. Every update was a disaster or a big event. Ghoul Dan Yinzu had been stirring up trouble for so many years, but he was crushed to death by an egg again. Why did it add again? The Burning Legion invaded again, and who knew how many more times they would have to face it. On this point, Galaxy had fully learned from Yamaguchi Mountain's experience. It was quite fun to play, but if one really transmigrated. Friend, do you have a return ticket? The Germinal Organization paled in comparison to the galactic catastrophes in the later versions, but for the current Han Xiao, it was a fatal predicament. The Blue Star's model is similar to Earth, and the Germinal Organization is an organization that tries to overthrow the regime of a large country. If I remember correctly, the test subjects of the Valkyrie experiment were all brainwashed and turned into cannon fodder. The origin of this body was the raw material used by the Germinal Organization for human experiments. There was a gap in his memory, and other than general knowledge, he only had many memory fragments of being imprisoned and experimented on. He was about 20 years old, and his appearance was vaguely similar to himself in his previous life. Whether he was healthy or not was hard to say. He still remembered the words of the doctor that he had been injected with the Valkyrie solution. This thing was one of the Germinal Organization's genetic agents. It was used to strengthen the brain, and the fatality rate was as high as 70%. However, it had caused a mutation in his body. A line of semi-illusory blue text suddenly appeared in front of his eyes. You have been injected with the Valkyrie solution. +1 end. You have received the ability high concentration. You have received the ability low-level mental resilience. Panel information. Han Xiao was overjoyed. A translucent blue screen appeared in his vision, and it was very sci-fi. It did not affect his vision. Name: Han Xiao race. Carbon human, yellow, model, NPC, version 1.0 open beta countdown. 358 days, 11 hours, 03 minutes. Level: 1 experience. 0 subclass. Commoner LVL1 0/50. Main class, none attributes. 2 STR, 2 DX, 3 Yendi, 3 INT, 1 MYS, 2 CHA, 1 LUK free attribute points. 0 energy, 0 LVL 0. Energy rank, 1, 2 grade. F. Mortal, trash with a combat strength of 5. Any random NPC on the street can rub you against the ground 100 times. Health points, 23/30ths, sprained, stamina points, 36/36 ability. High concentration. Increase learning and crafting speed by 10%, low-level mental resilience. Increase willpower by 3 skills. None potential points. 0 class knowledge tree. Locked influence. None legend. 0 equipment. None. Galaxy's game panel. Thank goodness, this thing is still here. God bless handsome guys. However, Han Xiao soon found something strange. NPC template. I'm not a player. Countdown to version 1. 0. Han Xiao furrowed his brows and found a few important factors. First, although he did not know why the attribute panel followed him, this was the real world. Every life was alive. If he died, he would not be revived like in the game. Second, although he had become an NPC, he still had the system panel of a player. This was undoubtedly good news, as he could level up like a player. Third, the countdown made him realize that the real world might have returned to the time before Galaxy was released. He had really returned to the past. Did that mean that the players of the past would appear again? Fourth, that was the main point. He was in a very dangerous situation. Han Xiao was troubled. Look at other people's transmigration. That was a normal start. Okay? 500 gold coins, 10 people, resources, helpers, and maybe even an ex-girlfriend. Even without that, at least the environment was safe. Even if there was an enemy who wanted to kill you, they would only stab you in the back. But what about him? At the start of the battle, he was a solo hero in enemy territory. If he was not careful, God would send him back to the Martyr's Palace, if such a thing existed. Han Xiao did not have the ability to revive players. He only had one life. It would be a pity to lose it here. That's right, what he thought was pity, which was slightly different from the normal person's I must survive. As for my life is not in the hands of the heavens. If the heavens want to destroy me, I will destroy the heavens, or swallowing a golden core and breaking through the door of life and death. That was usually the reaction of a person in the late stages of middle school. What the hell? Am I the only one who is being attacked? Han Xiao complained. Although his senses were no different from reality, he had a lot of doubts in his heart. What was the essence of his existence? A real life? Or a set of data? A soul transmigration? Since I'm here, I'll just have to take it one step at a time, Han Xiao thought to himself. No matter what he was, if he did not want to die a hero, he had to find a way to survive. There was still a year to the open beta. Before the players arrived, he had a year to prepare. This was the only good news that excited him. He had a deep understanding of the destructive power of the players. Like a plague of locusts, they were synonymous with chaos and madness. Clang! At this time, the door of the small dark room opened, and a few people walked in. Because of the backlight, Han Xiao could not see their faces clearly. He could only vaguely see that the leader was a woman with a hot body. How's the test subject? The woman spoke to her subordinates behind her. Her voice was slightly hoarse, like a cup of rich coffee. There was a touch of sexiness in her languid voice. Looks like he's out of the manic phase. The person in charge of the experiment, Lin Wei Xian, looked at Han Xiao with a burning gaze, as if he was looking at his own private property. Han Xiao asked hoarsely, "Who are you?" Seems like there's a problem with his memory. The woman raised an eyebrow. Valkyrie stimulates the brain. Memory loss is a normal reaction. Lin Wei Xian narrowed his eyes. As his eyes gradually adjusted to the light, Han Xiao saw the woman's face clearly. He was stunned. She had a head of long, wine-red curly hair that covered half of her face. She was wearing a tight black combat uniform, and her hot figure looked like it was going to burst out of her clothes. She was very attractive. Her facial features had the three-dimensional features of a Westerner and the gentleness of an Oriental. She was like a mixed blood, beautiful and alluring. She had black eyeshadow on, and her whole body exuded a mature and languid temperament, just like a beautiful snake. If Daji was this beautiful, then King Zhou's death was not in vain. This thought surfaced in Han Zhao's mind. Hela, the person in charge here. The red-haired beauty stared at Han Zhao, waved her hand, and said, "Take him away for a blood test. I want to see the report immediately." Two expressionless elite guards walked forward, grabbed Han Zhao's arms, and dragged him out. Han Zhao looked at the strong bodies under the uniform and the pistols on their waists, and immediately gave up on resisting. He recognized Red Snake Hela. This was one of the Blue Star Challenge locations, the Valkyrie Laboratory, one of the subordinate bases of the German organization. In version 1.0, the boss Hela had tortured countless Blue Star newbies and was called Sister Dissuade on the forums. In the future, she even became a galactic powerhouse in the Colton Star Cluster, and her strength exceeded the Calamity grade. She was crowned with the title Goddess of Death, and was famous in the entire Shattered Star Ring. Chapter 2. A chapter of close to 6,000 words. Because there are many settings in it, there are no chapters. If you don't want to look at the settings, you can skip them. It's not important anyway. Serious face. Before the story begins, let's briefly introduce who our main character is. Han Zhao, man. The reason for this ambiguous name was simple. His mother's surname was Han, and his father's surname was Zhao. Simple and direct, but the meaning was profound. When he was in his 30s, he had enough to eat and the whole family wasn't hungry. As for his looks, he was the type of person who would be called Big Brother by a 30-year-old uncle sitting at the same table as him when he was bribed by his neighbor's elementary school student with 200 yuan to pretend to be a family member and attend a parent-teacher conference. Although he looked a little dispirited, in the circle of Galaxy, he had a lot of friends and was somewhat famous. His main ID was old man chatting coquettishly young madman. He was at the level where he could feel the admiration and envy of casual players when he was strolling in the player city. In the official forum's comments on the experts in the China region, his comment was unpredictable battle style, professional level reaction on the spot, good at 5 classes, and excellent at mechanics. Compared to the 2 or 3 pages of comments of other experts, Han Zhao's comment was only 1 sentence. It was rumored that he was not a person who liked to be in the limelight, and he often rejected interviews from video game reporters, so he did not have much exposure. The truth was that whenever a reporter interviewed him, he hoped that the reporter would add an advertisement at the beginning of the interview. Are you still troubled by the 10 consecutive kneels in the arena? Are you still depressed about being piked in the wild? Great leveled in Galaxy. Accept gold farming, leveling, revenge, and bonus services. Price is negotiable. You won't lose out if you don't buy. You won't be tricked. Honest management. Scammers get lost. Contact ID. Reality proved that, even in the parallel universe of 2060, small advertisements were still frightening. That was why Han Zhao was so quiet. "Sai, I have to eat. It's all because of life." Han Zhao was brought back to the laboratory for a blood test. The terrain of the base was unknown, and the number of armed personnel was unknown. With his basic attributes as a newbie, rashly resisting was asking for death. The well-trained guards in the corridor were probably level 5 to level 8 special agent subclasses. They were the strongest among ordinary people. If he remembered correctly, Hela was currently an executive officer of the German organization. She was a grade E Esper with an energy level of more than 500 Ona. Conservatively speaking, she could probably take on 1,000 of him. In the year 23333 of the exploration era, a genius concluded the cultivation method of Qi, establishing the same basic theory for all the cultivation systems in the universe, completely opening a new era, and supers began to shine. Galaxy was a stage for superhumans. There were a total of 5 supers: Esper, Pugilist, Mechanic, Mage, and Psychic. These were the main classes in Galaxy, and they could be obtained by learning the class knowledge book. Professions were divided into main professions and subprofessions. There were only 5 main professions, but there were many subprofessions, and they did not require any profession knowledge books. The first test that all newbies faced upon entering Galaxy was to find the book of professional knowledge and change to their main profession. New characters could choose from two starting points. The first was the normal starting point, in which the system would give them a set of clothes that would never be dropped to prevent them from running around naked, a fixed amount of money, and a set of starting points on a newbie planet, usually in different factions. This starting point was very stable. The second was the random starting point, in which the new character would be involved in a special event, which could lead to danger or opportunity. Han Zhao's current situation was very similar to the random starting point. Although the game had turned into reality, he was still familiar with the background, and he had a wealth of experience to rely on. Han Zhao calmed down. Not long after, the blood test results were out. Hela took the data from Lin Wei Xian and frowned. There's nothing wrong with the blood test. The Valkyrie solution mainly stimulates the brain, Lin Wei Xian said. Maybe we should cut open his skull to check his brain activity. Cut open a ladle to extract the juice? Would I still be alive? Han Zhao grumbled. Hela waved her hand to stop him. He is the first surviving test subject of the Valkyrie's experiment. Unless absolutely necessary, do not use destructive means. Han Zhao rolled his eyes. Perhaps this identity could be put to good use. Lin Wei Xian did not agree with Hela's words. It would be a pity if such a good subject could not be studied. Then let's observe for a while and see if the Valkyrie solution has improved his abilities. Hela narrowed her cold eyes. Let's brainwash him first. Brainwash? Han Zhao's heart sank. Brainwashing was a common method used to control subordinates. Players who were successfully brainwashed would automatically join the faction. However, his current life was real. The worst-case scenario was that his thoughts and consciousness would be changed. This was unacceptable. The good news was that Blue Star did not have the technology to directly change one's memory in version 1.0. The German organization's brainwashing method was relatively primitive, using images and sound to torture and reset one's thoughts. Anyone with an intelligence of 10 or above would be immune to the brainwashing. The Valkyrie solution had increased his endurance by 1 point. Endurance was a hidden attribute that affected the growth of one's endurance. Different races had different innate potentials. In the entire galaxy, humans had average innate potentials. They had the highest innate potentials, but their HP was very low. This 1 point in endurance was very useful to Han Zhao. High concentration increased learning and crafting speed by 10%, increasing efficiency. Low-level mental resilience gave him 3 points of mental resistance, which was equivalent to an additional 3 points of intelligence. If he wanted to be immune to the brainwashing, he was still short of 3 points of intelligence. Leveling up a civilian profession will randomly increase 1 attribute point and 1 free attribute point. The chances of it increasing intelligence are too low. Han Zhao knew his limits. In the past, when he was playing the lottery in the game, he always wondered if there was a distant relative at home who was sleeping in the black soil of Africa. If there was a god protecting him, it had to be the goddess of calamity. In comparison, obtaining a new profession was undoubtedly the safest option. Currently, Han Zhao was unable to move freely. However, a random start would not be a hopeless situation from the start. It would definitely give the player a chance. He suddenly paused. Come to think of it, I'm an NPC now. The system might not be protecting me, right? Take him to the brainwashing room. Hela waved her hand and left the room. The 2 stern-looking armed guards moved around him, one on the left and one on the right. The one on the left looked like someone who owed him $300,000, while the one on the right looked like someone who had been constipated for 10 days. His expression was the same as the landlord's every time he came to ask for rent. The group of people came to another room. There were many complicated mechanical instruments inside. Lin Wei Xian went to adjust the machine. $300,000 and constipated bro pressed Han Zhao into a chair. 10 meters away from the wall was a row of glass bookshelves. Han Zhao turned his head to look at the bookshelves. Rows of titles jumped into his eyes. Tom's Basic Mechanical Theory, The Genes of Humans and Lizards, Reed's Hypothesis. It seemed like these were the reserved books for researchers. Wait, there's a profession knowledge book here. There's always a way out. Han Zhao was overjoyed. The 2 guards behind him were eyeing him covetously. It seemed that if he made the slightest move, he would be attacked. Han Xiao did not hesitate at all. He suddenly stood up and walked towards the bookshelves. This action gave the others a fright. $300,000 and Constipated Bro completed the action of aiming their guns in 0.6 seconds. With the black muzzle pointed at his back, Han Xiao's expression did not change. He did not stop walking and said to himself, "Don't shoot. With my little health, one shot will kill me." The next second, Lin Wei Xian's voice came from behind him. "Wait, let's see what he's going to do." $300,000 and Constipated Bro hesitated for a moment before releasing their fingers from the trigger. Han Xiao let out a sigh of relief. He had made the right bet. As long as he did not have any aggressive tendencies, the identity of the first successful test subject would be his protective talisman. His actions would only be treated as an experimental effect. Tom's Basic Mechanical Theory, a book of basic knowledge for the mechanic class. This was his goal. He took out the book from the bookshelf and started flipping through it. You have completed a self-study of basic mechanical knowledge. Due to your INT, Basic Assembly Progress, 2, 0% plus 0, 2% for high concentration. It worked. Han Xiao was overjoyed. Although he could not understand it, the system would automatically judge and help him learn the knowledge within. Lin Wei Xian's face was filled with confusion. The test subject's actions seemed to be learning. Could it be that the experiment increased his learning ability? Out of consideration for his observation, Lin Wei Xian did not stop Han Xiao. The entire room was silent. Only the rustling of the pages could be heard. Basic Assembly Progress, 15% plus 1, 5%, 29% plus 2, 9%, 48% plus 4, 8%. The speed at which the pages were flipping became faster and faster. Han Xiao's expression did not change, but in reality, he was slightly anxious. Every second that passed was not only time, but also his freedom. With a bang, the door opened again, and Hella walked in. Seeing this scene, she frowned. "What's going on?" "It's like this," Lin Wei Xian explained and told her about the Valkyrie's experiment. "You're saying that his learning ability has been enhanced?" Lin Wei Xian. "This is the conclusion of my preliminary observation. If you allow me to cut open his brain for testing, I can give you a more accurate conclusion." Han Xiao could not help but think to himself, this old guy is so passionate about cutting open people's brains. How much does he like to eat brains? Hella waved her hand and rejected Lin Wei Xian's request. If the test subject's brain was enhanced, it might be more important to the organization than training a cannon fodder agent. They needed to immediately brainwash him and instill loyalty to the organization. She turned her head and asked Lin Wei Xian, "Is the brainwashing device ready?" "It's ready." Lin Wei Xian pointed at the device in the room. Han Xiao's ears twitched. So this is where the brainwashing device is set up. Damn, I have to hurry up. At this time, a new notification appeared on the interface. Basic Assembly Progress, 90% plus 10%. You have learned the basic knowledge of a mechanic. The mechanic class tree of knowledge has been unlocked. You have received a new class, Mechanic Novice. Plus 10 energy, plus 1 INT, plus 1 END. You have received 2 free attribute points. You have received 1 potential point. You have learned new skills, basic machinery affinity, basic training, and basic enhancement. A warm current appeared out of nowhere and flowed through his entire body, clearing his mind. Different from simply learning skills in the game, all the mechanical knowledge that he could not understand before became understandable and deeply imprinted in his mind, turning into real knowledge. This change made Han Xiao almost unable to maintain his poker face, and he was so shocked that he almost threw the book away. So, the things in the game can really be learned? What kind of joke is this? Galaxy has been in operation for more than a decade. Why hasn't the Earth Federation dominated the Milky Way yet? There must be something wrong. Han Xiao was shocked. His inner face changed. Name: Han Xiao Race. Carbon-based human, yellow. Model: NPC. Countdown to version 1.0. 358 days, 10 hours, 11 minutes. Level: 2 experience. 0 secondary class. Commoner LVL1, 0/50, main class. Mechanic Novice LVL1, 0/200 health, 43 50ths, sprained, stamina, 80 to 80 personal attributes. 3 STR, 3 DX, 5 YND, 4 INT, 1 MYS, 2 CCHE, 1 LUK free attribute points, 2 energy, 10 out of 10, LVL1, LVL1 10, STR +1, DX +1, YNE +1, stamina +20 energy rank, 3 4 grade. F mortal, still 1 combat strength away from. Fighting trash talent, high focus, increases learning and crafting speed by 10%, basic mental resilience, increases willpower by 3 skills, basic machinery affinity LVL1, 0/1000, increases understanding of machinery, basic repair LVL1, 0/400, performs basic repairs on basic machinery, basic enhancement LVL1, 0/600, enhances basic machinery potential point. 1 class knowledge tree frowny face armament, basic assembly LVL1, 19 unlearned skills, energy, 20 unlearned skills, control, 20 unlearned skills, influence, 0 legend, 0 equipment, none, strength determined melee attack power, and it also affected the ability to carry heavy equipment. Dexterity determined movement speed, attack speed, and dodging ability. It also increased ranged attack power. Stamina increased health and stamina. Every point of stamina increased health by 10 points and stamina by 12 points. Some talents and skills could affect this. Stamina also increased the natural recovery rate of health and stamina. All actions would consume stamina, such as attacking, blocking, running, walking, swimming, crafting, and so on. Stamina determined the defense of the body, not stacked with the defense of the equipment. Defense was divided into many sets of damage reduction formulas. For example, if a person was hit by a bullet while wearing metal armor, even if their defense was the same, the damage reduction rate would be completely different. It depended on the type of attack, melee, ranged, bullet, energy, power, one's attributes, and the material of the equipment. This series of formulas was calculated by the quantum computer, and the official website did not give a clear algorithm. To the players, it was obvious that the higher the defense, the better. Intelligence determined one's comprehension and willpower. The higher one's intelligence, the faster one's skill proficiency would increase, and the more experience one would gain. It could also increase one's learning and crafting speed. This attribute was the main attribute of the mechanic class, and it affected the quality of the final product. Mystery determined one's perception of the mental world, and it determined the attack power of the psychic and mage classes, just like how strength and dexterity were to the pugilist class. Charm affected the initial favorability of certain people and factions, and it gave discounts when trading with NPCs. Luck affected certain judgment and item drop rates. Free attribute points could be used to increase strength, dexterity, endurance, intelligence, mystery, charm, and luck. Energy was the core attribute of Galaxy, and it was the foundation of supers. It could only be increased through leveling up and skills. The description given in the game was bioenergy extracted from cells through special training methods. Having energy was the sign of super. Even espers who had awakened their genes needed energy to support the consumption of their esper abilities. In history, there have been countless people who had been drained by their own esper abilities. Every time one's energy reached a certain standard, they would receive an attribute bonus effect. For example, 10 energy was the standard for energy level 1, 50 energy was level 2, and 100 energy was level 3. The attribute bonus at each level was not fixed, and it would change with the main class. The higher the grade of the class, the higher the attribute bonus. Using super skills basically consumed energy. Once one's energy decreased and fell below a certain level, they would lose the attribute bonus of that level. For example, energy level 1 was 10. Once one's energy was consumed below 10, they would lose the attribute bonus of energy level 1. This concept was equivalent to a decrease in status after using a skill, which greatly increased the importance of the details of a battle. Energy could slowly recover on its own, but could also be quickly recovered by consuming stamina. If one's energy was depleted and still persisted in using skills that consumed energy, it would consume stamina at a disproportionate rate. Once stamina was depleted, one's health would start to decrease. Supers who were drained by their own Esper abilities all died this way. Energy level was an evaluation of a character's combat ability and determined the grade of a super. Professor Stuart Ona of the Radiant Federation had created the energy level theory and unified all the complicated energy calculations into the energy level unit Ona. The calculation method was not addition or subtraction, but a complicated function. The overall trend was a curve. E, D, C, B, these are the grades of supers. The standard for grade E supers was 100 Ona. Hela was one of the stronger supers in grade. It was a watershed, also known as the calamity grade. It could cause a destructive disaster on the surface of a planet. There were even higher grades above grade A, and Han Xiao had once been an expert at that grade. However, to the current him, it was still very far away. After becoming a grade 1 mechanic, plus 2 free attribute points, it was only enough to push his intelligence to 6 points. He still lacked 1 crucial attribute point to be immune to the brainwashing. Han Xiao was a little depressed. Other than leveling up, he had no other choice. The problem was, how was he going to gain experience? It was obviously impossible to fight monsters, and the chances of triggering a mission were not high. *T, is there no other way? Han Zhao's eyes suddenly flashed. Maybe there was still a way. He threw the book away, turned around, and stared straight at the pistol on 300,000's waist. His expression was wooden and blank, as if he was in a daze. Hela frowned and swallowed the order that was about to come out of her mouth. She looked at Han Xiao with confusion along with everyone else, not knowing what he was going to do. Han Xiao tightened his muscles and deliberately made his movements appear stiff. He walked toward 300,000 and stretched out his hand as slowly as possible so that everyone could see his movements clearly. He reached for the pistol on 300,000's waist. 300,000 instinctively covered the gun. He found that Han Xiao had no intention of fighting for it, but he refused to let go. He felt like a child stubbornly holding onto a toy that he wanted. It was also because Han Xiao had deliberately slowed down his movements that 300,000 did not pull out his gun and open fire. Unload the bullets. Hela showed an interested look. She wanted to see what Han Xiao was up to. 300,000 did as he was told. He pulled out the magazine and allowed Han Xiao to take away the pistol. The moment he received the pistol, Han Xiao learned the item's information. Type 73 Wasp, gray, small caliber portable firearm, attack 28-35, fire rate 1. 1/S, energy output level 13, spring mechanism, sleeve, firing pin, magazine missing. Basic assembly gave him a lot of mechanical knowledge, and the structure of the Type 73 Wasp automatically appeared in his mind. Han Xiao instantly understood how to assemble it. The process in the game was simplified by the system and only required a loading bar, but now he had to do it himself. This was more immersive than the game. He also confirmed that he had transmigrated to a certain reality and not just a game. Suppressing the complicated feelings in his heart, Han Xiao awkwardly disassembled the pistol into a pile of parts and then began to reassemble it. Basic assembly, and his skill bar glowed slightly. 40 seconds later, the pistol was assembled. This speed was nothing for a special agent, and it was even a little slow. However, Hela and the others did not forget that Han Xiao had not received any training at all. He had only read a book for 10 minutes. Everyone was shocked. Was this the effect of the Valkyrie's experiment? Lin Wei Xian was excited. What a strong learning ability. If I can study his brain, maybe I can replicate it. Damn, how obsessed are you with brains? Han Xiao repeated the process of disassembling the pistol. You have completed 1 mechanical assembly. Basic, 69% perfection, 28 EXP gained. You have completed one mechanical assembly, basic, 73% perfection, 32 EXP gained. There were many ways to gain EXP in Galaxy. Other than killing monsters and missions, skills and manufacturing experience were important sources of EXP for mechanics. Mechanics were weaker in the early stages of the game, so they were more inclined towards logistics. As he became more familiar with the process, the speed of disassembling the pistol became faster and faster. Gradually, he could complete it in 20 seconds. Hela finally came back to her senses and said seriously, "Brainwash him immediately." At this time, Han Xiao completed the last assembly, and his EXP finally reached 200. Put all into Novice Mechanic. A warm current appeared in his mind, and a pleasant notification sounded in his mind. Novice Mechanic leveled up to LV. 2. Plus 10 energy, plus 1 INT, plus 1 END. You have received 2 free attribute points. You have received 1 potential point. That was close. Han Xiaoxin let go of the pistol and let the guard take it back. Chapter 3. Cold shackled his hands and feet, and a metal frame fixed his head. 2 face splitters extended from the frame to prevent him from blinking. In front of the chair was a black screen with speakers on both sides. Han Xiao was fixed to the chair and could not move. He stared at the black screen in front of him. How long will the brainwashing take? 12 hours. Stay here and keep an eye on him, Hela said and left with her men. Lin Wei Xian turned on the switch, and the screen lit up, displaying strange images. Triangles, circles, and ripples kept changing shapes and colors, creating a strong impact on Han Zhao's vision. He felt very uncomfortable. The speakers played music that was sometimes restless and sometimes soothing. The strong contradiction made Han Xiao instinctively feel uncomfortable. He wanted to close his eyes, but his eyelids were held open by the face splitter. His eyeballs gradually became bloodshot, and he felt sore. Wow, this is so uncomfortable. This was a relatively primitive method of brainwashing. The brain was like a sophisticated instrument, and the basic principle was to use the continuous conflict between vision and hearing to cause confusion in the brain. After calibrating and resetting, the brain would be instilled with a thought stamp. Although this method was a little primitive, it had its advantages. It would not cause too much damage to the brain. In Lin Wei Xian's eyes, Han Zhao's brain had extraordinary value. It was a precious work of art. Lin Wei Xian's greedy eyes made Han Xiao very angry. He was like a butcher looking at a pig, thinking about which piece of meat was the best. He had 4 AP on him. After thinking for a while, he added 2 AP to increase his intelligence to 7, leaving 2 AP for future use. You're undergoing brainwashing. Basic, undergoing a spirit authentication. INT 7, basic spirit resilience plus 3. Authentication passed. You are immune to this brainwashing. The nausea slowly subsided, and Han Xiao felt a little better. Lin Wei Xian secretly complained that Hela had thrown the troublesome task of brainwashing to him. However, he did not know that Han Xiao was immune to the brainwashing right under his nose. After the last authentication, Han Xiao had endured 12 hours of torture. His back was aching, and his eyes were dry. Lin Wei Xian calculated the time and turned off the brainwashing device. Han Xiao suddenly felt as if he had been reborn. Hela came over again, and the leader ordered her to brainwash Han Xiao personally, not allowing any mistakes. The restraints on his body were untied by Hela. The blood flow in the area where he was tied was not smooth, and there was a patch of greenish-purple. Although Han Xiao was in pain, he did not lower his head to look. He had to act as if he had been brainwashed. He maintained a blank expression, without focus, and looked straight ahead. Hela suddenly bent down and leaned closer. Their faces were only 10 centimeters apart. Her moist breath blew on his lips. Han Xiao didn't have the slightest bit of romantic thoughts. Good heavens, at such a dangerous moment, he simply couldn't have any crooked thoughts. The woman's perfume clearly wafted into Han Zhao's nose, making his nose itch. It took him a lot of effort to stop himself from sneezing. Hella's tone was gentle, as if she was hypnotizing him. Who are you? Hiss. After brainwashing, one would usually be instilled with a prepared identity. When faced with an uncertain question, the best response would be to remain silent. Han Xiao adjusted his facial muscles and showed a dazed expression, as if he had been played with. He turned a deaf ear to Hella's words. I don't know how to act, but I can still act as a poker face. Hella whispered into his ear. Her murmur mixed with her moist breath entered his ear. Her wine-red curly hair tickled his neck. From the corner of his eye, he could see Hella's open collar. The large expanse of smooth white skin almost blinded him. Han Xiaoxin was as calm as an ancient well, immovable as a mountain, and saintly as a Buddha. Song Mountain has a well named Kong. Songhai has an island named Feng. What a joke. I've seen the Calabash brothers hundreds of times. Would I fall for your beauty trap? From today onwards, your name is Zero. The germinal organization is your home, your country, and the resting place for your soul. You have absolute loyalty to the organization. Everything you do must be based on the organization's interests. You cannot hide anything, and you cannot do anything that harms the organization's interests. The meaning of your existence is to carry out the organization's orders and be prepared to sacrifice your life for the organization. Lin Weixian sneered. You live as a member of the organization, and you die as a ghost of the organization. Even if we turn you into a specimen, you can only obey. Hella asked, who are you? This time, it was different from before. It was a question to determine whether the brainwashing was successful or not. Han Xiaoxin thought for a moment and did not answer immediately. Hela furrowed her brows and turned to look at Lin Weixian coldly. Lin Weixian mumbled, I've been following the brainwashing program. There shouldn't be any mistakes, right? At this moment, Han Xiao finally opened his mouth. He deliberately dragged out his words to make it sound like he was slow. I am Zero. Lin Weixian's eyes lit up as he thought of an explanation. The Valkyrie solution increased Zero's learning ability, but the side effect is that it will weaken his emotional communication ability. Hella thought back to how Zero had been so focused on his books. Indeed, he was slow to react to changes in the outside world. She could not help but believe this explanation. It seems that the experiment was not perfect. You're wrong. This is the perfect effect. Why would cannon fodder need emotions? Take him to rest. I'll go ask the leader. I'm safe for now. Han Xiao finally heaved a sigh of relief. When he was being brainwashed, he had already thought of creating an image of himself as slow to lower the enemy's vigilance. Although the location of my transmigration is not very good, the timing is not that bad. The Valkyrie experiment he had experienced was only the prototype of the future Super Soldier project. They had not yet developed a miniature self-destructing chip to control the loyalty of test subjects. If he had transmigrated to that time, he felt that he would have suffered less if he had killed himself earlier. The goddess of luck has finally blessed me. Hella connected the call to an encrypted number. Leader, Zero's condition is stable. A hoarse male voice came from the phone. Has the brainwashing been completed? I'll personally conduct it. There won't be any problems. What do you plan to do with Zero? The purpose of the Valkyrie experiment is to nurture warriors and train him. Hella did not comment. Since it was the leader's arrangement, she had no objections. How's my sister? That's not what we agreed on. The male voice was slightly joking. I gave you the right to visit her once every 2 months. Don't cross the line. Hella's white and tender hands were bulging with veins. Her expression was uncertain. The male voice laughed hoarsely. It was as ear-piercing as sandpaper. With a click, he hung up the phone. The Valkyrie laboratory was built in white. It was located underground, and the air was oppressive. The guards who came and went had cold gazes. After a night's rest, Han Xiao was brought to a sealed training ground where Hella was waiting for him. He did not know what the germinal organization had planned for him, but he guessed that they would not give up on his learning ability. He would definitely have many opportunities to gain experience in mechanical engineering. It seemed that he would not be able to escape from this heavily guarded base in the short term. Han Xiao mentally prepared himself for a long time to come. Zero, from today onwards, You will undergo combat and shooting training every day. Hela threw a set of protective gear to Han Xiao. Put on. Han Xiao quickly put on the protective gear. It looked like a fight was about to break out. Hela twisted her feet, and her high-top combat boots made an ear-piercing sound as they scraped against the ground. With a burst of kinetic energy, she crossed the 5-meter distance between them in the blink of an eye and rushed in front of Han Xiao. Her long legs, wrapped in a tight black uniform, whistled through the air like a whip. Bang! She was too fast. Han Xiao's vision blurred, and he was kicked. Even with protective gear, his sternum creaked. His face paled, and he stumbled back a dozen steps. He clutched his chest and coughed violently, as expected of a superhuman. Even without using her full strength, she was still several times faster than a normal person. Hela said calmly, "I'll let you rest for 30 seconds. Continue." Combat training was rough and simple. There was not a single word of communication, just continuous fighting. 2 hours later, Han Xiao was completely exhausted, and there was not a single spot on his body that was not aching. He even suspected that this woman had a masochistic tendency. Did a woman who dressed like a queen like to do such things? Hela, LV 30, has taught you basic combat. Current progress, 5%. After the training, Hela turned and left without saying a word. A burly man walked in and dragged Han Xiao, who was on the verge of falling apart, to the shooting training ground next door. "I'm your firearms instructor and also the deputy manager of the base, Baltar." The burly man introduced himself. He had a ferocious appearance, and there was a hideous scar on his forehead. His triangular eyes were filled with murderous intent. He stuffed a Type 73 Wasp pistol into Han Xiao's hands and said, "There are 10 training bullets in here. Hit the target's head with all of them." Han Xiao was stunned. The human-shaped target was 30 meters away, and it was already so difficult. He did not have any shooting skills to improve, so he was basically a newbie who had never touched a gun before. It would be a miracle if he did not miss the target. Hit the head with all of them? Only an Olympic champion would do that. Han Xiao had no choice but to use his sore arm to raise the pistol and pull the trigger. The recoil caused his wrist to ache. Bang, bang, bang. After 10 shots, Han Xiao looked at the electronic scoreboard next to him. Naturally, he did not have enough points. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his back. Han Xiao's head trembled, and it took all of his willpower not to scream on the spot. He turned around and saw Baltar playing with a black tactical dagger. He licked the blood off the blade and sneered. "Continue. If you don't meet my requirements, I'll give you a stab. Let's see how much blood you'll lose today." Crazy. Han Xiao was furious. He reached out and touched his back. His hand was wet with blood. On one side of the shooting range was a one-way mirror. Behind a mirror was a surveillance room. Hela and Lin Wei Xian were watching this scene. Lin Wei Xian shook his head. "Baltar doesn't know how to cherish such a precious test subject. He might as well let me dissect him." A trace of disgust flashed in Hela's eyes. She glanced at Lin Wei Xian and said, "The organization won't agree to your request." Lin Wei Xian sneered. "Once the organization wrings all of his value, they will send him to my lab. I created him, so he's my personal belonging." Hela knew that Lin Wei Xian was telling the truth. This was the organization's way of doing things. She did not say anything. In the eyes of the organization, Han Xiao was just a tool. He was not even a human. Baltar LV 15 has taught you basic shooting. Current progress, 5%. Agent, class unlocked. 1% his arm was cut again. The cuts were not deep, but there were already more than a dozen wounds on his body. His clothes were soaked in blood. Baltar looked at the pale but silent Han Xiao with interest. He enjoyed the feeling of the blade cutting through flesh and the smell of blood. It was the most beautiful scene in his eyes. "Why don't you scream?" Baltar played with the dagger and said, "If you don't scream, you're not a qualified toy." "Damn pervert." Han Xiao took a deep breath. He wanted to punch Baltar's morbid face, but he knew that such a reckless action would only lead to bad results. It was like playing League of Legends. If he fought with the enemy head-on, he would only end up worse. The right thing to do was to call the jungler and kill the jungler as well. Then everyone would happily argue and type GG in the midst of laughter. That would save them a round of wasted lives. If it were the same as when he was young, he would have slapped Baltar twice. But now he could not resurrect like the players. What else could he do? He could only forgive Baltar like a father. I'll let you laugh as much as you want first. There will be a time when you cry. Han Xiao gritted his teeth, not because of anger, but because of pain. Chapter 4. On a novice planet with a magical background, the potions used to replenish HP and MP were things like life recovery potions and mana recovery potions. On a planet like Blue Star, the red and blue potions were clearly a set of nutrition potions and healing potions. After the infuriating shooting training ended, Han Xiao was brought to a nutrition pod filled with healing potions by the researchers for 2 hours. The wounds on his body had scabbed over, and he could move freely. However, it would affect his wounds, causing him to feel a dull pain in his nerves. There was an empty machinery modification room in the base. Because he had displayed his talent in machinery, he was placed there alone. He could use the lathe, materials, and tools as he pleased. There was a surveillance camera in the corner of the room. Han Xiao was not surprised at all. The researchers were probably observing him at all times. The bookshelves by the wall were filled with books, and Han Xiao found a few basic machinery knowledge books. Blue Star, year 687 of the Galaxy Calendar, one of the novice planets. It had just come into contact with galactic civilizations and was in the process of transitioning from the old civilization era to the new civilization era. Its civilization level was still on the surface of the planet, and its technology was similar to that of Earth. The machinery technology that could be found was at most advanced knowledge. The mechanic class tree of knowledge had 3 branches: armed, energy, and control. Each branch had 20 types of knowledge, which were divided into 5 levels: basic, advanced, high-end, peak, and ultimate. Class knowledge was the growth tree of the players, the core system of the main class. The first class knowledge was used to obtain the main class. The class knowledge after that required potential points to learn, and the level of the knowledge was also increased through potential points. There were 3 ways to obtain potential points: leveling up, or rewards from certain high-level missions. Training a skill to the max level. He had 2 potential points, but he did not plan to learn new class knowledge for the time being. Class knowledge was not urgent, and he had other uses for the potential points. Many players had squandered all their potential points in the beginning because it was easy to level up, and they were dumbfounded when they needed them. As one grew, potential points would become harder and harder to obtain, and every point was precious. Han Xiao spent all his free time outside of training on machinery, trying to accumulate enough EXP as soon as possible so that he could escape from this enemy camp. Time passed quickly. Han Xiao gained EXP by using the 2 techniques of assembling and strengthening machines. As he became more familiar with the technique, he was able to maintain the perfection rate of the basic machines at 90% and above. Every time, he would gain a lot of EXP. If a machine was assembled too many times, the experience points would continuously decrease until it gave no experience at all. Fortunately, there was a specialized armory in the base, and there were many types of guns, which provided enough materials for him to farm assembly experience. The German organization was not wary of Han Xiao. After all, he was a test subject whose memories had been erased by the organization. Furthermore, he had been brainwashed. They did not think that he would show any signs of resistance. Han Xiao maintained a low-key image of being taciturn and harmless to lower everyone's guard against him. The organization had high hopes for Han Xiao, but he knew very well that the bird that sticks out will be the first to be shot, so he decided to save his experience and not level up. The researchers were soon disappointed. This level of mechanical assembly could be done by trained logisticians, but it was not in line with their expectations for the Valkyrie experiment. After a month of observation, the researchers stopped their 24-hour surveillance and came to the conclusion that Test Subject 0 was a failed product. Thus, they began to focus on improving the Valkyrie potion. Han Xiao did not have to disguise himself under the surveillance at all times, so he was much more relaxed. As there was no return on their investment, the Germinal organization's patience with him gradually decreased. Only Lin Wei-Xian and Baltar continued to pay attention to him. Lin Wei-Xian was curious about Han Xiao's mutation and repeatedly suggested to the organization that they dissect Han Xiao to obtain more experimental data. However, he was always rejected with the reason of weight. Han Xiao knew very well that according to the Germinal organization's way of doing things, he would end up in Lin Wei-Xian's hands sooner or later. This gave him a lot of pressure. Baltar, on the other hand, did not hide his passion for torturing people. He claimed that it was a way to spur the test subjects to complete their training. He could not torture his colleagues, so the only choice was to torture the test subjects. Due to the existence of the healing agent, his actions were not stopped. The researchers also believed that a suitable amount of torture would stimulate the test subjects to change. Gradually, Han Xiao became numb to the pain. He remembered the blood splattered with every stab and waited silently. Living in a dangerous place with enemies everywhere, Han Xiao had no one to communicate with. Thus, Han Xiao spent more of his energy on studying machinery. He ground the cold metal into various shapes on the lathe and assembled them into useful tools. This process gave him a sense of fulfillment. One by one, armed guards carried out a large number of supplies from the machinery modification room. Han Xiao watched silently from the side. The organization is very disappointed in you. From today onwards, you will be given an 80% reduction in resources. The crew-cut man stood in front of Han Xiao with a smug and disdainful expression. He looked down at Han Xiao with the eyes of a victor. He was test subject number 1, the second surviving test subject after Han Xiao. I heard that you were the test subject before me. The organization has spent a lot of resources on you, but you only know how to play with this junk. You are a failure. The organization made the right decision to let me take your place. Number 1's tone was disdainful. He was a test subject that had been completely brainwashed. The organization was his religion, and he had an inexplicable hostility toward Han Xiao. Han Xiao did not want to waste his breath. Creating a conflict would be an unwise move to expose himself. If the investment did not pay off, the German organization would decisively change the target of their investment. Therefore, after the birth of number 1, the organization withdrew most of the resources given to Han Xiao. Han Xiao had expected this. What number 1 showed was the result of the Valkyrie experiment. He had great talent in combat and a strong body. He could be trained to become a metal warrior quickly. As the laboratory did not have any maintenance staff, Han Xiao was able to keep the machinery modification room. He was responsible for the maintenance and repair of the firearms. However, the free parts and materials allocated every month were greatly reduced. He was treated as a failed test subject by the organization. A few guards passed by and saw this scene. They did not hesitate to mock him. TSK, TSK, two pitiful worms. To be used for experiments, to become cannon fodder, and to be completely brainwashed. To become like them, they might as well die. Shut up. What does it matter? They have been brainwashed anyway. Every pair of eyes was filled with coldness, as if they were looking at a pet. Test subjects were just cannon fodder in the eyes of the Germinal organization. As the discussion faded away, Han Xiao lowered his eyes to hide the light in his eyes. Half a year passed in the blink of an eye. During this time, Han Xiao had figured out the layout of the Valkyrie laboratory and the deployment of personnel. The Valkyrie laboratory was hidden underground. It had a total of 3 floors. Because it was a secret laboratory, it was not large. It was hidden in a forest in the wilderness, and supplies were replenished through airdrops. There were a total of 60 armed guards stationed there. Hella was the supervisor of the laboratory, and Lin Wei-Xian was the person in charge of the experiments. Every once in a while, the organization would send a batch of human subjects whose memories had been erased for experiments. This base was the main laboratory of the Valkyrie project. Including Han Xiao and number 1, there were a total of 78 successful test subjects. Apart from this, The German organization had more than a dozen laboratory branches to mass replicate cannon fodder. Most of the 78 successful test subjects were transferred to other places via helicopters. Only number 1 led 9 of the most talented test subjects to form an elite reserve team and receive training there. Ever since the organization stopped paying attention to him, Han Zhao's life became monotonous. Every day, apart from training, he would stay in the machinery modification room to repair and assemble firearms. It had basically become his own little world. The guards were used to ignoring Han Zhao's existence. When their eyes swept past Han Zhao, they would not linger on him for even a moment. It was as if Han Zhao was just a wall, just a background. The lack of attention gave Han Zhao a lot of convenience. His nonstop mechanical work gave him a huge amount of EXP. Just like the mistletoe, he quietly absorbed nutrients from the germinal organization under everyone's nose. He also memorized the structure of many basic firearms. This kind of basic technological weapon, which could be found anywhere, only needed to be assembled many times to master the manufacturing method. It was not a skill that was recorded on the interface. The EXP gained from assembling and enhancing were separate. When Han Zhao could not gain EXP from assembling, he began to enhance to gain EXP. He was very careful. Every time he was done, he would return the gun to its original state and hide its ability. Through Gila and Baltar's training, he had mastered basic combat and basic marksmanship. He had also unlocked a talent, well-trained, which gave him an extra 100 HP, giving him an extra layer of protection. He had also unlocked the profession Special Agent, which increased his total level to 4. After constant practice, simple repair and simple enhancement had reached level 4, and basic combat and basic shooting had reached level 2. The growth of the mechanic class required a large amount of financial support. This was one of the limitations of the mechanic class. Fortunately, the germinal organization provided materials for free. After Han Zhao had assembled 90% of the firearms in the armory, he finally reached the limit of the EXP he could gain in the base. 600,000 EXP, half a year of accumulation. In his previous life, the ratio of time in real life to in-game time was 6-to-1. Half a year was equivalent to a month in real life. Without doing any missions or fighting monsters, this amount of EXP was very impressive in the early stages of the game. Only the mechanic class could accumulate so much EXP under such limited conditions. Approve Lin Wei Xian's request to dissect Zero. He has requested it many times. The leader said over the phone. Hela frowned. You have rejected him many times as well. The germinal organization has invested in him, so there must be a return on investment. The leader's tone was indifferent. The only value of a waste product is that it can be disassembled and recycled. Zero is a waste product. Hela bit her lip. Understood. Zero's question was not the main point of the call. The leader changed the topic. How is the training of Zero's test subject team? Very promising. They have great potential. Very good. Send them to the Owl base for training. I have already sent the Owl squad to pick them up. They will arrive in 2 or 3 days. That's the day I visit my sister, Hela said in a low voice. You don't need to accompany the Owl squad on missions. That's good. Chapter 5. Huh. Gila exhaled and shouted. Her tender fists were filled with immense strength, and they flew toward Han Zhao's chest like bullets, creating a crackling sound in the air. Han Zhao took the punch head-on. Enduring the suffocating feeling in his chest, he grabbed Hela by the collar of her uniform and twisted his waist, throwing Hela over his shoulder. Hela didn't panic at all. With her palms on the ground, she lightly flipped over and easily resolved the shoulder throw. Han Zhao didn't chase after her. He just stood there and rubbed his chest. Is that all you've improved? Hela was dissatisfied. Han Zhao didn't say a word. He was deliberately hiding his strength. With his performance, the organization should have given up on him. However, for the past 6 months, Hela continued to train him every day. Today, she was especially hardworking. Hela didn't expect Han Zhao to speak. She knew that Zero was a man of few words, like an emotionless robot. Although she was the supervisor, she was actually very free. She had nothing to do in the base every day. Training Han Xiao was one of her few activities. When she found out that the leader wanted to hand Han Xiao over to Lin Wei Xian, Hella's feelings were complicated. Although the two of them had almost never interacted with each other, after half a year together, there was bound to be some kind of special feeling between them. Even if it was something commonly used, she would still miss it, let alone a person. Perhaps it was because of a trace of nostalgia, but Hela could not bear to see Han Xiao being dismembered into hundreds of pieces on that scumbag Lin Wei Xian's experiment table. How many times had those familiar faces disappeared on a normal day, never to appear again? The organization's ruthless methods had caused her to lose many friends. And her sister. Hela was disappointed. If Zero could display his talent in combat at the last moment, perhaps the leader would change his mind. That was why she was working so hard to train Han Xiao today. Unfortunately, miracles didn't happen so easily. The leader agreed to let Lin Wei Xian dissect you. Hela sighed. Strictly speaking, this was the first sentence Hela said to Zero that had nothing to do with training. Hela didn't notice that Han Xiao's eyes had turned sharp for a moment before disappearing. So, this day has finally come. Han Xiao had long expected that his performance would lead to such a result. To the Germinal organization, useless people were trash stocks that needed to be sold as soon as possible to recover their investment. However, Han Xiao did not regret it at all, as the degree of importance was directly related to the degree of surveillance. If he had displayed his extraordinary abilities in a high-profile manner, he would only have been exploited even more harshly. With his identity, it was impossible for him to enter the core of the Germinal organization, and he would always be treated as a tool. At most, it was just a matter of whether he was useful or not. Otherwise, Han Xiao would not have minded working for the Germinal organization. Suddenly, Han Xiao saw a photo on the ground. It seemed to have fallen out of Hela's pocket during the shoulder throw. He bent down to pick it up. It was a group photo. The background of the photo was a clear blue sky. The sun was setting, and the main characters of the photo were two little girls standing side by side. One of them was a young Hela, smiling brightly. The other girl looked somewhat similar to Hela, but her hair was snow white, and she looked gentle and obedient. Hela's expression changed. She quickly snatched the photo back. Seeing that it was not damaged, she heaved a sigh of relief. She carefully kept the photo, looked at Han Xiao deeply, and turned to leave the training ground. A message suddenly popped up on the interface. You have triggered a D-level mission, Night Owl Operation. Accept/reject? Han Xiao's eyes flashed. This was the first time he had triggered a mission in half a year. There was nothing to hesitate about. Accept. Mission hint. The dark and bloody rise of the Germinal organization has always been a secret of the 6 nations of Blue Star. Hela's past is unknown. Is she really loyal to the Germinal organization? You have found a clue. If you continue to investigate, you may be able to obtain unexpected rewards, but it may also lead to unexpected danger. Of course, you can also provide this clue to someone else in exchange for a reward. You can also keep it to yourself. No matter what, the choice is yours. The mission was obviously triggered by the photo. Coincidentally, Han Xiao recognized the white-haired girl. She was Hela's sister, Aurora. Aurora also had special abilities, but hers and Hela's were polar opposites. Hela was extremely aggressive, while Aurora's blood had strong healing abilities. It could even extend one's lifespan and bring the dead back to life. Aurora was brainwashed and controlled by the Germinal organization. Not only did they use her special ability, they also used it to blackmail Hela into doing a lot of bloody work for the Germinal organization. The only person Hela cared about was her sister. At the end of version 1.0, the war between the 6 nations and the Germinal organization reached its climax. The Germinal organization dismembered Aurora and used her flesh to create countless healing potions with effects comparable to a second life. They won a huge victory on the battlefield. Hela, who was at the front line, only found out what had happened a few months later. Hela completely collapsed. The Germinal organization had already guessed her reaction. They immediately sent a large number of experts to capture Hela and imprison her. Hela suffered inhumane torture in prison. Her bone-deep hatred gave her terrifying tenacity. She endured all the torture and finally found a chance to escape. From then on, Hela became cold-blooded and cruel. She used countless lives to develop her special ability and became stronger by any means necessary. She completely fell into the evil faction and became the infamous goddess of death on the Shattered Star. Although the current Hela was cold, compared to the future goddess of death who looked down on thousands of lives and destroyed civilizations, she was 10,000 times kinder. If there was a chance, Han Xiao really wanted to help her and change Hela's tragic future. It was not out of pity, but to avoid trouble. In his previous life, Hela was a crazy woman who killed anyone she caught. Han Xiao was unlucky enough to meet Hela more than 10 times, and every time, his battleship was destroyed. The key to changing Hela's future lay with Aurora. However, at the moment, Han Xiao did not have the ability to do so. Escaping was the most important thing. Every 2 months, Hela would leave the laboratory at a fixed time. In 2 days, Hela would leave again. He had enough EXP. The opportunity had finally come. Returning to his machinery modification room, Han Xiao called out the interface. He now had 3 professions: civilian, special agent, and novice mechanic. The civilian professions could be ignored. The other 2 professions were his capital to escape from the laboratory. Among the 5 professions, mechanic was the weakest in the early stages. However, he did not regret it at all. Mechanic was the profession he was best at. In the early stages, mechanic was more focused on logistics and living professions. However, after version 3.0 opened the profession knowledge tree, mechanic's combat ability soared and became more popular. It was even comparable to pugilists, which had the most players. In the later stages, a high-level mechanic was a galactic army. The mechanic class was famous for having many skills. Every blueprint was equivalent to a skill, and there were thousands of blueprints for the mechanic class. Therefore, the potential for development was very high. Different skills could be used to create countless combat styles, such as trap style, positional style, heavy cannon style, sniper style, army style, mechanical suit style, and so on. However, the disadvantage was also very obvious. To train a mechanic expert, the EXP required was many times more than other professions. Mechanic beginner leveled up to LV 3, plus 10 energy, plus 1 INT, plus 1 END, plus 2 free attribute points, plus 1 potential point. Mechanic beginner leveled up to LV 10 max, plus 30 energy, plus 1 INT, plus 1 END, plus 2 free attribute points, plus 1 potential point. The upper limit of every profession was LV 10, and they could only continue to level up after the class advancement. Han Xiao spent a total of 130,000 EXP to level up Mechanic Beginner from LV 2 to LV 10, which gave him an additional 8 END, 8 INT, 100 energy, 16 free attribute points, and 8 potential points. His total level was now LV 12. The main profession was usually the most important to level up as it gave him the most energy. After Mechanic Beginner reached LV 10, Han Xiao temporarily did not meet the requirements for the class advancement. He had expected this and put it aside for now. Han Xiao then leveled up Agent to LV 9, which cost him 80,000 EXP. Agent gave him a total of plus 12 STR, plus 9 DX, plus 3 CHA, 9 potential points, and 9 free attribute points. His total level was now LV 20. A character could have an unlimited number of professions, but there was a bottleneck every LV 20, and he needed to complete the promotion mission before he could continue to level up. The level cap in version 1.0 was LV 60. There were hundreds of professions in Galaxy, and the players had countless combinations. In the later stages of the game, individualization was very important. There was no fixed growth strategy, and every character had their own differences to maintain the game's appeal. However, Han Xiao realized that his interface did not show the level cap, which meant that he could have power that surpassed the players in the version. In version 1.0, 0 and version 2.0. The player's area of activity was basically the novice planets. In the depths of the universe, the large galactic organizations had always existed, but the players could not come into contact with them. Therefore, the versions limited the players. Now that he was an NPC, he naturally did not have such shackles. LV20 Promotion Mission. Learn a mechanic class promotion knowledge. The prerequisite for the promotion knowledge was to learn 5 basic knowledges of a branch. The armed branch knowledge in the base was not complete, so he could not do anything about it. Han Xiao spent another 150,000 EXP to level up basic repair and basic enhancement to LV10, which gave him 2 potential points. This was related to his future plans. He spent another 10,000 EXP to level up basic machinery affinity to LV3. Based on his familiarity with Galaxy, Han Xiao spent 60,000 EXP to level up basic combat and basic shooting to LV6, which gave him 2 new skills, grappling and precise shooting. The remaining 170,000 EXP was what Han Xiao had saved up for blueprint gambling. Creating blueprints was the most important ability of the mechanic class. After leveling up, the mechanic class would automatically obtain blueprints. This was the first way to obtain blueprints. The second way was to obtain blueprints from missions or special NPCs. These were special blueprints and were usually rare. The third way was to disassemble machinery and reverse engineer blueprints. However, the conditions were harsh, and it cost a lot of EXP. The fourth way was the most important one, knowledge fusion. By fusing 2 or more class knowledges, if the combination was correct, a new blueprint could be created. However, every fusion cost EXP. There were countless combinations of 60 knowledges, and every combination hid many blueprints. However, only one type of blueprint could be created every time a combination was fused. Some blueprints even had hidden prerequisites, so it was very difficult to know how many blueprints a combination could create. The EXP of fusing the same combination would stack continuously. Even if a new blueprint was not created, the EXP would not be returned. This was why it was called blueprint gambling. This was the specialty of the mechanic class. It created the mechanic class combat style and was also the source of their strength in the later stages. It was also a bottomless pit of EXP. Before he had transmigrated, the players had found thousands of combinations. With more than 10 years of experience, Han Xiao had an impression of 80 to 90% of them. Choosing the mechanic class had a huge advantage. It could reduce the weakness of the mechanic class in the early stages to the greatest extent. There were a few rare blueprints that were godly in the early stages of the mechanic class. Of course, there was also a function that was rarely used, free creation. The players could create their own machinery according to their ideas, but there was a 99% chance that they would create a pile of scrap metal. The success rate depended on the rationality of the concept, the quality of the materials, the level of the class knowledge, talents, tools, and so on. Until the version before Han Xiao transmigrated, the players had not perfected the self-creation function. Even if they occasionally created their own machinery, the effect was not as good as the blueprint machinery. This function had always been seen as useless. Leveling up his class gave him 19 potential points. Maxing out the 2 skills gave him 2 potential points. He had a total of 21 potential points. Han Xiao took out the class knowledge book that he had prepared long ago from the bookshelf, took a deep breath, and invested the potential points. Do you wish to spend 1 potential point to learn the armament branch, basic mechanical engineering? Do you wish to spend 1 potential point to learn the armament branch, basic bionics? Yes. A large amount of knowledge was poured into his mind. Han Xiao's head was swollen and overloaded. It felt like it was going to explode. It was so painful that his face twitched. It took a full 10 minutes for the pain to subside. Mechanical knowledge that he had never understood before was deeply imprinted in his mind. Han Xiao spent another 2 potential points to raise both basic mechanical engineering and basic bionics to LV2, increasing his mastery level. The combination of these 2 basic mechanical knowledge, can create 6 blueprints. The same combination will give double the EXP for each fusion. The first fusion of the basic combination will give me 10,000 EXP. 170,000 EXP is enough for me to fuse 4 times. I have to find that thing in these 4 times. Han Xiaoxin was nervous. His palms were sweaty. He dragged LV, 2 basic mechanical engineering, and LV, 2 basic bionics, together on the interface. Do you wish to fuse knowledge, basic mechanical engineering plus basic bionics? This fusion will cost 10,000 EXP. Yes. His brain was dizzy for a moment. A brand new invention blueprint appeared out of thin air. Fusion successful. Congratulations on creating cloud swallow gliding wings. Not this. Han Xiao clenched his fist. Continue. This fusion will cost 20,000 EXP. Fusion successful. Congratulations on developing the bionic artificial limb. F*CK. Even the trashiest blueprints are out. This is not it. Again. This fusion will consume 40,000 EXP. Fusion successful. Congratulations on developing the lightweight mechanical arm. Got it. Han Xiao slammed the table excitedly, and a screw fell out of the way. Lightweight mechanical arm. This is what I want. Half a year's worth of savings was almost gone. Name, Han Xiao race. Carbon-based human, yellow, model. NPC, countdown to beta 1. 0, 182 days, 8 hours, 23 minutes, level 20, advancement not yet completed, EXP 100,000 subclass, civilian LV 1, agent LV 9, 0/25,000, main class, novice mechanic LV 10, max, class advancement not completed, HP 32320 stamina, for 34,434 attributes. 21 STR, 17 DX, 22 Yendi, 15 INT, 1 MYS, 5 C Che, 1 LUK free attribute points, 27 energy, 120 LV, 3 LV, 110 STR plus 1, DX plus 1, Yeni plus 1, max stamina plus 20 LV, 2, 50 STR plus 3, DX plus 2, Yendi plus 3, max stamina plus 50 LV, 3, 100, STR plus 3, DX plus 3, Yeni plus 5, max stamina plus 100 energy rank, 48, 55 grade, F, mortal, compared to the weakest superhuman, you're just an ant. Abilities, high focus, elementary mental resilience, well-trained, plus 100 base HP, skills frowny face mechanic class, elementary machinery affinity LV. 3. Simple repair LV 10 max, simple enhancement LV 10 max, blueprint, gliding wings LV 10/5000, blueprint, bionic prosthesis LV 10/2000, blueprint, lightweight mechanical arm LV 10/10,000, agent, basic combat LV 60/16,000, plus 6% unarmed attack basic shooting LV 60/16,000, plus 6% accuracy grappling LV 10/3,000, plus 3% parry counterattack rate, plus 2% unarmed attack rate precision shooting LV 10/3,000, plus 3% accuracy, plus 2% critical hit rate potential points. 17 class knowledge tree frowny face arms. Basic assembly LV 1/0 Basic mechanical engineering LV 2/0 Basic bionics LV 2/0 17 unlearned skills energy, 20 unlearned skills control, 20 unlearned skills influence, 0 legend, 0 equipment, none. After half a year of accumulation, he had risen by 20 levels, and his combat power had soared. With a total of 27 free attribute points, Han Xiao spent 5 points to raise his intelligence to 20, meeting the requirements of the blueprint for the lightweight mechanical arm. He saved the rest for emergencies. There was only one last step left, and that was to equip himself. Looking at the mechanical parts all over the floor, Han Xiao laughed. I'll teach you what it means to raise a tiger and invite calamity. Cherish the attribute panel. He won't appear again for a long time. Chapter 6. The Valkyrie's laboratory was disguised as a building on the ground. It was an abandoned farm. The fields were abandoned, and the roof tiles were broken. The farm was enclosed by an electrified wire fence, and there was only one gate. It was surrounded by an endless forest, and there were many broken buildings in the forest. Nearby was a small city from the old civilization of Blue Star, but it was now abandoned. A few decades ago, the Blue Star had connected with the interstellar forces and obtained all kinds of universal knowledge. They had entered the new civilization era, and the social environment had changed dramatically. Many cities were abandoned, and there was only a kind of post-apocalyptic atmosphere. A black Harrier helicopter landed on the abandoned farm. 6 fully armed agents in black suits got off the helicopter. They were wearing black goggles, and their faces were cold. They were emitting a cold-blooded aura that prevented people from getting close to them. I'm a leader of the 3rd Night Owl Squad, codename Silver Knife. I'm here to transfer the Valkyrie's test subject team. Silver Knife's tone was as cold as stone. Gila combed her long hair that was blown up by the wind created by the wings of the helicopter. She said calmly, "Do whatever you want. There are off-road vehicles in the garage. I'm taking the helicopter. Don't waste my time." Number 1 led the 9 test subjects to Silver Saber. He held his head high and said, "Test subject number 1 greets, sir." Silver Knife said coldly, "Come with us." "Yes, sir." Number 1 was so excited that his face turned red. Going to the headquarters for training was a supreme honor in his eyes. The Night Owl Squad and the test subject team came to the garage and opened the camouflage forest green dust-proof cloth, revealing several high-horsepower bulletproof off-road vehicles. The 2 squads drove the vehicles out of the only gate and disappeared into the forest. Hella got on the helicopter and flew away. She suddenly felt uneasy. She had an ominous feeling. Strange, I feel like I've overlooked something. Hella frowned. Today was the day that the leader allowed her to visit her sister, so Hella didn't think too much about it. In the machinery modification room, after installing the last hinge, Han Xiao put down the wrench and wiped the sweat on his forehead. In front of him was a hollow exoskeleton mechanical arm. It looked like a large silver alloy arm. The outer armor was made of manganese steel alloy. This alloy was strong and hard, and was suitable for forging weapons and armor. In order to reduce weight and earthquake resistance, the inner part of the mechanical arm was made of light metal. All the parts were polished by the lathe in the modification room. The German organization's workshop and equipment were very advanced, and the parts were polished perfectly. These metals were all ready-made. Although the base had reduced the amount of materials in his machinery modification room, it was not difficult to find some good metals. During the construction process, the left arm was used as a reference, and the left hand could be inserted into the mechanical arm to control it. With a flick of the finger, the hinge switch could be activated. The power came from a small engine and air pump hidden in the core of the mechanical arm. It was protected by layers of armor and could provide a lot of power. The blueprint contained all the details of the production. Coupled with Han Zhao's own experience, the process from polishing, processing, and final assembly was very smooth. From Han Zhao's perspective, the control system and power system of this lightweight mechanical arm were rather outdated, and the materials used were also very ordinary. However, for the time being, this was already the best weapon he could build. It could be considered an excellent piece of equipment in the early stages, and the success rate of escaping would increase by at least 20%. Moreover, he found that although making it himself was much more difficult than the loading bar of a game, it gave him more room to play freely. The advantages far outweighed the disadvantages. Lightweight mechanical arm, left, quality, white basic parameters, attack 35 to 58, defense 13 to 17, power level 38, durability 270 equipment requirements, 25 STR bonus attribute, -3 SPD length, 51 centimeters, elbow plus forearm plus palm, weight 14. 7 lbs additional effect, plus 10 STR increase. The equipment level from low to high was divided into gray, common, white, normal, green good, blue, good, violet, excellent, pink, rare, orange, legendary. The interface notified him that he had completed the first production and gained 3,000 EXP. The rewards of creative work were much better than assembly and enhancement. Han Zhao's current strength was 21, so he spent 4 AP to reach the equipment requirement. In the spare time on the lathe, Han Zhao used simple enhancement modification to modify a Type 73 Wasp. It had an attack of 38 to 47, and it was much more powerful than the normal version. This was the first time he had fully enhanced a weapon. Of course, he would save the good stuff for himself. As long as he had enough bullets, this gun would be able to unleash its full potential. Han Zhao also used the leftovers from the mechanical arm to make a tactical dagger. The blade was mixed with tungsten steel, and it was very sharp with an additional 10 melee attack. It would be a waste not to use the materials anyway. Because Han Zhao had been keeping a low profile for a long time, there was no one watching him 24 hours a day. Han Zhao was the only mechanical support staff in the base. To be cautious, he first built the parts and then welded them together. The guards who occasionally glanced at the surveillance screen could not see what Han Zhao was building. They thought that he was repairing the gun as usual, so the process was very smooth. Han Zhao hid the lightweight mechanical arm and the enhanced Wasp. His inventory was a real weight, not an extra-dimensional space. As the equipment was too eye-catching, he could not carry it around with him. Han Zhao hid the dagger at his waist and walked out of the room. He went to the cafeteria in the basement. When they had nothing to do, most of the agents would play cards here to pass the time. A lot of his intelligence came from the daily conversations of these agents. No one avoided him when they talked, so this gave him a chance to ask for more information. As expected, pretending to be slow was a wise choice. I'm so jealous that Hella can leave the lab and stay in this shitty place every day. It's so boring. She's the executive officer of the organization. Her position is much higher than ours. Hella's face and body. If I could play with her for a night, I'd be willing to shorten my life by 3 years. Kid, you new here, right? The last person who dared to challenge Hella didn't even have a single strand of hair left. How do you think she became the executive officer? You mean she's a superhuman? Humph, of course. Han Zhao's eyes flashed. It was good news that he did not have to face Hella head-on. He did not have the slightest confidence that he could win against Hella. He stood up and left the cafeteria without attracting any attention. There were surveillance cameras in every corridor. If he wanted to escape, he would have to clear the surveillance room first. The surveillance room was on the 3rd floor. Han Zhao pretended to wander aimlessly as he approached the room. The armed guards he met along the way ignored him. 2 armed guards were guarding the door of the surveillance room, and there would be 2 more inside the room. In other words, it would not be easy to kill 4 guards quickly and silently. However, he had practiced this thousands of times in his mind, so he was not nervous at all. There was a surveillance camera at the corner of the corridor. Han Zhao saw that there was no one around. He took out the leftover soft bread from breakfast, put it in his mouth, and soaked it with his saliva. He swung his hand and stuck it on the camera lens, blocking the image. He did not have any advanced hacking equipment, so he could only use this old method. After waiting for 3 seconds, no one came out of the surveillance room. Han Zhao was surprised. He had heard the complaints of the guards on duty and their colleagues before. The base had never encountered any danger, so the guards on duty would not take it seriously and were all lazy. Han Zhao calmed himself down and walked to the door of the surveillance room. 2 armed guards extended their hands and stopped him. Unauthorized personnel are not allowed in. This is 0. It's useless to talk to him. Just chase him away. The guard on the left nodded and pushed Han Zhao's shoulder. Just when the 2 of them were completely unprepared, Han Zhao moved. He twisted the wrist of the guard on the left and pulled out a tactical dagger from his waist with his other hand. He stabbed the dagger into the guard on the right through his head. The dull sensation of the dagger penetrating flesh was clearly transmitted from the handle to the guard's wrist. The expression of the guard on the right froze on his face. He did not make a single sound before he died instantly. Han Xiao released the dagger and pulled back his arm. Before the guard on the left could react, his head was in Han Xiao's arms. As a trained security personnel, the guard knew very well how fatal this position was. In a panic, he tried to pry Han Xiao's arm away. In the next second, Han Xiao twisted with all his might. With a crack, the person in his arms stopped struggling. It took less than a second to end 2 lives. You have hit a critical point. Normal attack has been converted into a critical attack. Minus 162 and minus 171 light blue damage values appeared above the heads of the 2 guards. The critical attack damage was the maximum health of the target. You have killed an armed guard of the Germinal organization. You have received 360 EXP. Grabbing the corpse and letting it fall silently, Han Xiao took a deep breath. He had actually simulated the swift and clean kill countless times in his mind. Killing did not bring him any discomfort. He was secretly shocked. Is it because I've been too depressed recently that I've become a psychopath? In his previous life, the largest animal he had killed was probably a gutless rat in his hometown. Now, he felt no different from killing people. He urgently needed psychological treatment. The interface prompted him to obtain the information of the 2 guards. Special Agent Level 7, Strength 10, Yini 15, Health Points 150. This was the standard of most of the armed guards in the laboratory. Individual health points were slightly different due to their physique. You have received 4 pistol magazines. Han Xiao found 4 wasp magazines on the 2 corpses. Holding the dagger in his hand, he quietly pushed open the door of the surveillance room. Dozens of blue lights from the surveillance screens lit up the room. Han Xiao saw a scene that made him completely dumbfounded. 300,000, who was on duty, and Constipation Bro were hugging each other intimately. Their lips were only a centimeter away from touching each other. When they heard the door open, they turned their heads in panic. The 3 of them were suddenly embarrassed, and the atmosphere was very stiff. Han Xiao was dumbfounded. A mouthful of blood was stuck in his throat, unable to come up or go down. Chapter 7. What should I do? This is so awkward. Should I leave as if nothing happened and ask them to stop their performance? Han Xiao neither supported nor discriminated against this kind of special relationship. He felt that what he saw was not just 2 men, but 2 lonely hearts. The high-pressure work gave them endless pressure, and they couldn't find an outlet. Therefore, some special feelings sprouted between the colleagues they worked with every day. This is not your fault. It's all Shi Chen's fault. Bah, the world's fault. Although his brain was thinking about this, Han Zhao's reaction was not slow at all. He held the dagger in a reverse grip and rushed toward 300,000 like a charging leopard. As if waking up from a dream, 300,000 hurriedly pulled out his gun. Han Xiao saw the opportunity and swung his dagger. If Constipation Bro hadn't kicked 300,000 away, the dagger would have cut off 300,000's wrist. His surprise attack was dodged, but Han Xiao was not discouraged at all. With a flick of his finger, he turned the dagger from a reverse grip to a forward grip and stabbed Constipation Bro in the abdomen. He clenched his fist and hit Constipation Bro on the neck. His movements were smooth, and he was knocked unconscious. Dash 42. 45. Your STR is 25, and the target's STR is 10. STR authentication successful. Your STR is more than twice the target's STR. This attack has an additional 50% STR. The target is stunned. Han Zhao's STR was more than twice the STR of these guards. His punches and kicks could cause the STR effect on the guards, as well as inflict negative statuses such as stun and broken bones. Very good. A threat eliminated. Han Xiaoxi nodded. 300,000, who was pushed away, rolled back to create a safe distance and raised his gun to shoot. If the gunshot was heard, the whole base would be alerted. Han Xiao reacted quickly and knocked 300,000 over with a flying tiger. They wrestled on the ground. His finger was on the trigger immediately, and he grabbed 300,000's wrist and smashed it hard on the ground. With a cry of pain, the gun fell out of his hand. Han Xiao didn't stop there. He rammed his head into 300,000's nose. The forehead was one of the hardest parts of the human body, and Han Xiao had added 25 points of strength to his attack. With a grunt, 300,000's nose was broken. Blood gushed out of his nose, and he was stunned. Han Xiao seized the opportunity and flipped to the back of 300,000. He locked his legs around 300,000's waist and wrapped his arms around 300,000's neck. He exerted force, and 300,000's face immediately turned purple. He found it difficult to breathe and couldn't make a sound. He flailed his legs as if he was drowning. Naked strangulation. You have used a sealing technique. Your STR is 25. The target's STR is 11. Your STR has passed. The target cannot escape. The stalemate lasted for more than 10 seconds. 300,000's resistance gradually weakened, and he fainted from the pressure on his neck. That was close. Han Xiao got up while panting. He felt a little emotional. If he was in the martial arts course, he would not be so tired. The pugilist class was the most popular class in Galaxy, for no other reason than it was cool. It was F*King cool. The names of the moves were so cool that they were explosive, such as King of Flames Earth-Shattering Wave, Magic Beam Cannon, and Star-Crushing Fist. It was hard to say whether the power of the moves could live up to the effect of the name, but at least it could ignite the soul of a Chinibu. It felt like the full power of the moves could not be unleashed without shouting the name of the move. Although most players felt that it was too embarrassing, with Han Zhao's experience as a pugilist smurf account, once he accepted this kind of setting, it actually felt quite good. Who hadn't been in the Chinibu age before? Furthermore, the combat style of the pugilist class was very simple. It was just brainless hammering. Compared to the mechanic class, which was the most difficult class to learn, it was like the difference between Angry Birds and Dark Souls. They were two completely different games. Han Xiao had the bonus of basic combat and grappling skills. Coupled with his experience as a pugilist smurf account, his fighting ability could be considered outstanding. At least, it would not be a problem for him to deal with ordinary people. He used his dagger to end the two people who had fainted. At this time, even the slightest bit of mercy would be cruel to himself. He also casually looted the bodies of 300,000 and Constipated Bro for 4 more gun clips. He did not have time to rest. He moved the 2 bodies in, took off the combat suit of one of them, and wiped the blood in the corridor. He used the butt of the gun to smash all the surveillance screens. After checking that there were no problems, he locked the door and left the surveillance room. His expression was calm. No one could tell that he had just killed 4 people, and that it was his first time killing people. It had to be said that facial paralysis was a good habit. No one could tell what he was thinking. Cleaning up the surveillance room was like removing the eyes that were hanging above his head. He finally did not have to sneak around anymore. When he returned to the 2nd floor, a guard suddenly stopped Han Xiao. "Mr. Lin Wei Xian wants to see you." Han Xiao paused for a moment, and his eyes flashed. Sure enough, Lin Wei Xian could not hold back anymore. He knew that this day would come, but he did not expect it to be so coincidental. Thinking about it carefully, this might be beneficial to him. Lin Wei Xian was an important person in charge of the experiment. He had a respected status and was one of the few people who had access to the base. Han Xiao originally wanted to make a move on him, but the other party took the initiative to come knocking on his door. He followed the guard to Lin Wei Xian's private laboratory. The lighting was dim, and there were bottles of transparent containers on the shelves on the wall. Human organs were soaked in formalin solution. It looked like the collection room of a psychopathic murderer. Lin Wei Xian's eyes were burning with passion as he sized up Han Xiao. He was very happy and said excitedly, "The organization has finally handed you over to me. As long as I dissect you, I will be able to find out why you are different from the other test subjects. Once I've discovered your value, your body will be qualified to become my specimen." My first test subject, how memorable. Han Xiao was as silent as a rock. In the darkness, his expression could not be seen clearly. "That guard, secure him for me. Don't let him struggle and ruin my experiment." After Lin Wei Xian finished his order, He turned his back to the two people and took out a strangely shaped scalpel and a skull opener from his toolbox. It was unknown how many human bodies it had cut open before, but the gleam of the scalpel made people shiver. Suddenly, Lin Wei-Xian heard a dull thud behind him. He turned around in confusion, only to find that Han Xiao had unknowingly stood behind him and was looking down at him. Before he could think, Lin Wei-Xian suddenly felt a sharp pain in his chest. He looked down and saw a dagger deeply embedded in his heart. His strength was quickly draining away, and the scalpel fell to the ground with a clang. Lin Wei-Xian was horrified. He looked into Han Zhao's eyes. Those eyes were always dull, but now they were as sharp as knives, making him feel as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. Looking past Han Zhao's body, Lin Wei-Xian saw that the guard had fallen to the ground. His neck was strangely twisted, and his body, which was not completely dead, was twitching. Lin Wei-Xian's eyes were blank. He had never thought that Zero would resist. He had witnessed the entire process of Zero's brainwashing. What had gone wrong? That's right, there's still the surveillance camera. Lin Wei-Xian looked at the camera in the corner with his last hope. Han Xiao said indifferently, "Give up. Everyone in the surveillance room is dead." This tone was definitely not something that the dull Zero could say. Lin Wei-Xian's body trembled. His face was ashen. He used the last of his strength to ask hoarsely, This past half a year, you've been pretending?" Han Xiao nodded. "How is this possible? Everyone was fooled by you." Lin Wei-Xian seemed to have heard something inconceivable. In this world, nothing is impossible. Han Xiao twisted the dagger forcefully. Lin Wei-Xian fell to the ground with unwillingness and shock. His eyes were wide open, and he died with a grievance. "I am your creator." Chapter 8. Han Xiao changed into the guard's uniform and left Lin Wei-Xian's lab. Many people on the base knew that he was taken away by Lin Wei-Xian, so he couldn't appear in his original identity for the time being. Only 4 people had a deep impression of him: Hela, Number 1, Lin Wei-Xian, and Baltar. The first 2 were not in the base, and Lin Wei-Xian had been killed by him. As long as he didn't run into Baltar, he would be safe for the time being. The door to the underground lab was made of a special alloy that was 80 centimeters thick. Even all the explosives in the armory would not be able to blow it open. The only way was through the electronic access control. Only 3 people had the right to open the door, and Lin Wei-Xian was one of them. A pure white card was lying quietly in Han Zhao's shirt pocket at that moment. However, there were sentries guarding the entrance, and the first floor was the guards' dormitory. Everyone here knew the 3 people with the white cards, so it was impossible to fool them. Beside the sentries was an emergency door closing device. As long as the gate was pulled, the access control system would be manually turned off, and the door would be completely locked. If Han Xiao swaggered into the lab with a white card, there would be no way out, and he would be surrounded within 10 seconds. At that time, it would be like catching a turtle in a jar. A single bullet could take away dozens of health points. If he was lucky, he would probably be able to survive for 0.8 seconds. Very heroic. Not a bad way to die. He decided to keep this as a backup option. Han Zhao's plan was to cut off the communication and buy himself a few hours of free time. This was the safest way. In fact, the original plan was to destroy the power supply, but the access control system was electrified. Cutting off the power supply would cause it to stop working. The transmitter for the communication signal was hidden in the wall of the 3rd floor underground. He would need a mechanical arm to break through the wall. The machinery modification room was on the 2nd floor underground. Han Xiao had to go back to get his equipment first. However, plans could never keep up with changes. When he was only 50 meters away from the machinery modification room, a large hand suddenly reached out from the side and pressed on his chest. Han Zhao's eyes narrowed. The person who stopped him was Baltar. The base was so big, so why did he have to run into Baltar, the person he least wanted to run into? What kind of luck was this? Was Murphy the embodiment of fate? Which group are you from? Why haven't I seen you before? Baltar asked. Han Xiao lowered his head and covered his face with his cap. I'm new. I'm in Team B. Baltar looked suspicious. When did we get new people? How come I didn't know? I think I've heard your voice somewhere before. Raise your head and let me see your face. Han Xiao glanced at Baltar from the corner of his eye. He saw that Baltar's hand was already reaching for the pistol at his waist, ready to fire at any time. The other three guards also sensed that something was wrong and moved closer. What to do? If they were discovered, Baltar would definitely send someone to look for Lin Weixian. Once Lin Weixian's body was discovered, his actions would be exposed. So, was it really necessary to dismember the body before leaving? No. For the sake of my appetite in the next few days, I shouldn't do such a thing. Die here? Don't have that kind of thinking. You have to have confidence in everything you do. If it's obvious that you'll die if you fail, don't think about failure before thinking about victory. How troublesome. I didn't want to use Plan B in the first place. What are you talking about? Baltar didn't hear him clearly. Han Xiao suddenly raised his head and revealed a dangerous smile. I've always wanted to tell you that you should go see a psychiatrist. 0. While Baltar was still in shock, Han Xiao took the initiative and stabbed his dagger into Baltar's chest. Baltar's pupils constricted, and he hurriedly leaned back. The dagger grazed his chin and cut open his flesh, leaving behind a trail of blood. Shoot! The three guards hurriedly pulled out their guns, but they were too close to Han Xiao. They were less than 3 meters away, which was not a good distance for a gunfight. Han Xiao strode across the 3 meters and punched one of the guards in the face. If there was a slow-motion replay, one would see the skin on his face tremble like a ripple. 48. The powerful punch stunned the guard. He staggered and knocked into his 2 companions, and the 3 of them fell to the ground. Han Xiao decisively turned around and sprinted toward the machinery modification room. Gunshots rang out behind him, and the bullets brushed past him, creating sparks on the wall. Baltar held his bleeding chin, and his expression was gloomy. He raised his gun and fired wildly at Han Xiao. All agents, reinforce the machinery modification room on the 2nd floor immediately. Target 0. The test subject is out of control. Baltar shouted into the mini walkie-talkie on his collar. The patrolling guards on each floor were shocked. They thought they were hallucinating. 0 out of control? Are you kidding me? Wasn't the test subject brainwashed? Is this a drill? Are you stupid? I heard the gunshots. Han Xiao suddenly became extremely calm. This was his special state of focus. His mind was as cold as ice, and his mind was cold as ice. Countless pieces of information gathered in his mind. The world in front of him became a crisscrossing grid, like a spider's web. Everything was connected. Reach the machinery modification room in 2 seconds. Baltar will take 3. 7 seconds to catch up. The 3 guards won't be a threat to me for 4. 2 seconds. Reinforcements will take 25 to 35 seconds to arrive. Han Xiao had been through countless battles. His rich combat experience was the basis of his ability to maintain this state. He ran like a snake, completely focused on dodging the bullets. Baltar chased after him. He didn't care about why 0 had lost control. He knew that his job was to capture Han Xiao. If necessary, he could even kill him on the spot. Interesting. The little toy wants to resist. Baltar licked the blood on his chin. This is the way you chose to die. Although he was ambushed by Han Xiao, Baltar was still very confident. He was an elite agent with 20 years of experience. Even if 0 was a fast learner, he had only trained for half a year. How many of his moves could 0 block? And by the looks of it, 0 was panicking. Han Xiao ran into the machinery modification room and slammed the door shut. You chose to hide in a room. This is a dead end. You're too inexperienced. Baltar sneered and rushed to the door. He raised his foot and was about to kick it open. He quickly reloaded his magazine and was ready to fire a round of bullets once the door was opened. Suddenly, something happened. The door exploded into pieces. A mechanical fist with a metallic hue broke through the door. The engine roared, and the silver fist smashed into Baltar's chest. 95. It was the sound of bones breaking. Baltar was sent flying like a rag doll and slammed into the wall. His ribs were broken, and his gun was knocked out of his hand. He spat out a mouthful of blood as he stared at Han Xiao, who was now a completely different person. At this time, Han Zhao's left hand was equipped with an exoskeleton-light mechanical arm. It was like a large arm armor covering his arm. The hinges and gears were rotating, making the sound of springs. The metal fingers moved nimbly, and the exposed pipe spewed out black smoke from the engine, like a black cloud that surrounded his arm. What the hell is this? Baltar's eyes widened in horror. Not far away, 3 guards aimed their guns. Han Zhao was 1 step ahead of them. He raised his enhanced Type 73 Wasp and fired 2 shots. Dexterity affected shooting accuracy, and skills had accuracy modifiers. Han Zhao's marksmanship was amazing. The bullets hit the eyes and throat of the 2 guards, triggering lethal damage and killing them instantly. The 3rd guard fired, and the bullet whistled toward him. Han Zhao raised his mechanical arm first, and with a clang, the bullet bounced off the outer layer of the mechanical arm. Lightweight mechanical arm, left, lost 8 points of durability. Han Zhao fired another shot, sending the 3rd person to the afterlife. The guard's eyes widened before he died. He could not believe that the silent and dull Zero was so strong. Didn't they say that the test subjects were brainwashed? It was all a lie. The corridor was quiet. Only Han Zhao and Baltar were left. It will take about 30 seconds for the nearest guard to arrive. Han Zhao moved the mechanical arm and said calmly, "I want to break your neck with my own hands to thank you for the 420 cuts you inflicted on me in the past 6 months." Baltar's eyes were fierce as he spat out a mouthful of bloody phlegm. He pulled out a dagger from his military boots and bent down, ready to pounce at any moment. He sneered, "That punch was powerful enough, but you're dreaming if you think you can beat me with this broken machine. Prove it. 30 seconds is enough for me to kill you 10 times over." Baltar roared and pounced with his dagger like a cheetah. Han Zhao raised the mechanical arm in front of him and clashed head-on with Baltar. Sparks flew as the dagger clashed against the armor. The moment the 2 of them passed each other, Baltar twisted his waist and swung his leg, aiming for Han Zhao's knee like a scorpion raising its tail. Kicking the enemy from behind and cutting the neck with a dagger was a very powerful move. Han Zhao, who had been trained by Hela, knew that Baltar would use this move. He reacted quickly and swung the mechanical arm backward, hitting Baltar's leg. The sound of bone cracking could be heard. -87. The mechanical arm's energy level was 38. Combined with Han Zhao's own energy level, it was almost at the standard of a grade E super. The lightweight mechanical arm doubled Han Zhao's attack power. Even though it was not enough to crush Baltar, every hit dealt around 90 damage, which was quite impressive. Baltar's health was only slightly more than 300, and that was with the addition of the well-trained talent. Coupled with the punch that he had used to break through the door, Baltar's health had been reduced to less than half. Baltar's health was starting to weaken. Baltar groaned and endured the pain. He stabbed his dagger toward Han Zhao's eyes, but his movement had slowed down, and the mechanical arm caught his dagger. "Impossible! How can I lose?" "You," Baltar roared, unwilling to give up. He wanted to fight back. As soon as he finished speaking, his vision suddenly turned black. The mechanical palm pressed down on his head and smashed him into the wall. The tyrannical strength directly suppressed his angry roar back into his throat. Bang! Gravel flew everywhere as blood and flesh flew everywhere. Han Zhao's eyes were cold. He slammed Baltar's head against the wall and pulled, leaving a deep red mark. Baltar's face, which had been rubbed against the wall, had become a bloody mess that was beyond recognition. Han Zhao let go, and Baltar fell to the ground like a puddle of mud. He was no longer as arrogant as before. "Sorry, I went back on my word and didn't break your neck. How about you get up and let me kill you again?" Han Zhao raised his eyebrows. Baltar did not answer. He did not have the chance to. "You have killed Valkyrie Laboratory Assistant Manager Baltar. You have received 1,500 EXP. Chapter 9. Teams A and B rushed to the 2nd floor and stared at Baltar's mangled body in shock. Baltar was killed. What happened here? Where did the enemy go? Why isn't anyone in the control room answering? Go ask for Professor Lin Wei Xian's help. Team C found Professor Lin Wei Xian's body. Oh my God. All the guards sucked in a breath of cold air, their faces full of horror. Was this all done by the Zero, who had no combat power at all? Zero had single-handedly turned the entire base upside down. All the important leaders had either left or died. The guards were shocked to find that no one was giving orders. Wasn't that test subject brainwashed? Could it be that he had been waiting for the right moment to strike? Thinking of this possibility, the guards were shocked to find that Han Xiao had been keeping a low profile. He was like a sharp knife hanging over their heads, ready to take their lives at any moment. They hadn't noticed him at all. Instead, they had ignored Han Xiao's existence. Everyone broke out in a cold sweat. Don't panic. There's only one enemy. Do a carpet search. Fire at will. Team A, go to the armory. Team B, check the control room. Team C, go to the lab to protect the experiment data. Team D, guard the main door. No matter what Zero wants to do, if he wants to escape, he'll definitely go to the main door. Move. At this critical moment, the Team A leader took over the command. The orders were clear. The guards immediately sprang into action. There were 60 armed personnel on the base, divided into 4 teams, A, B, C, and D. They were usually stationed at different posts, but they would gather in the event of an emergency. However, Han Xiao had many plans to deal with all kinds of situations. Boom! A muffled sound came from below. Every guard felt the ground shake. The Team A leader was shocked. What's going on? The sound of gunfire came from the walkie-talkie, mixed with urgent shouts. Team C encountered an enemy in the lab. I repeat, Team C encountered an enemy in the lab. Damn it, Zero detonated a grenade. The lab is on fire. Where did he get the grenade? The Team A leader was furious. He and his team had been waiting outside the armory. No one had come. Reinforcements. Send reinforcements immediately. Which team is the closest? Our Team B is also on the 3rd basement floor. The surveillance room has been destroyed. We are rushing to the location of the exchange of fire. On the 3rd floor, Han Xiao was hiding in the corner of the corridor. The laboratory 10 meters away from him was filled with billowing black smoke and raging fire. He had used 3 grenades tied together to set the Valkyrie's experiment data on fire. More than 10 guards from Team C were shooting at the corner where he was hiding. After killing Baltar, Han Xiao did not go straight to the main entrance. Instead, he went back to the 3rd floor in the opposite direction. He knew that the guards had set up an inescapable net and were searching from the top floor. If he rushed up recklessly, he would be ambushed. Since the plan of sneaking away didn't work, Han Xiao could only change his plan. The laboratory was on the 3rd floor underground, where all the experimental data was stored. It could be said that it was the core area of the entire base. Blowing it up would disrupt the enemy's deployment to a certain extent. What? You want to ask him where he got his grenades? He had basically assembled all the equipment in the armory. In the process, he could steal some gunpowder and steel balls and secretly make a new grenade. It was not difficult at all. You know how to skimp on materials. You know what soul talent is. I also have 77 bullets and 5 homemade grenades. Han Xiao checked his equipment. His firepower was limited. He quickly peeked out from the corner of the room, then immediately shrank back. Bullets rained down on him. If he had been half a second slower, he would have been hit by at least 2 or 3 bullets. 12 guards, 3 right in 9 submachine guns, and 9 Type 73 Wasp pistols. Their firepower is stronger than mine. Han Xiao's eyes darted around. It had been a minute since the attack on the laboratory. Team B would arrive in 3 minutes. He did not have much time left. Logically speaking, he should not have known, but Han Xiao had picked up the walkie-talkie from the guard's corpse and learned of the enemy's deployment. The attack had happened so suddenly that the guards did not realize that the walkie-talkie had exposed their movements. Han Xiao activated a grenade and threw it out. The sound of the explosion was so loud that the guards of Team C quickly ran for cover. The sound of gunfire stopped. Han Xiao's face turned serious. With a mechanical arm in front of him, he rushed out and quickly closed the distance between the two sides. Before the smoke had even dispersed, Han Xiao had already passed through the smoke and rushed to the front of guard. His mechanical fist smashed into the guard's stomach. The guard immediately spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with pieces of internal organs. This punch had taken away more than half of the target's HP, directly reducing the enemy's combat ability. Shoot! Shoot! The sound of gunfire rang out. Han Xiao grabbed the guard's body and pushed forward. The other enemies did not hold back and decisively opened fire. Blood spurted out of the guard's back as he was shot into a pile of mush. With the protection of the meat shield, Han Xiao successfully closed the distance between them. Like a tiger in a flock of sheep, his mechanical arm roared. Every punch and kick was enough to break the bones of the guards, and he killed 3 of them. The guards of Team C hurriedly spread out. Han Xiao rolled and blocked with his mechanical arm. The bullets bounced off the metal, and the durability of the bullets dropped rapidly. He took out his handgun and counterattacked, emptying a clip and killing 3 guards on the spot. At this moment, Han Xiao felt a sharp pain in his arm and thigh. You have been shot in the right arm by a Type 73 Wasp. You have received 17 damage. You have been shot in the left leg by a Right N9 submachine gun. You have received 21 damage. You have been shot. You have entered a state of light bleeding. You will lose 1 HP per second for 15 seconds. Please bandage your wounds as soon as possible. X2 gunshot damage had a high chance of causing a bleeding effect, which was very troublesome in the early stages. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes. He had been mentally prepared for this. He was glad that Baltar's torture had made him accustomed to pain, and the injury did not affect his mobility. Han Xiao did not have time to look for cover and shoot back. He gritted his teeth and threw out a grenade. The agents hurriedly took cover, and the gunfire stopped again. Boom! The sound of the grenade's explosion caused Han Xiao's eardrums to hurt. He let out a low growl and pounced forward again. A minute later, all the guards of Team C were killed by his lightweight mechanical arm. The price they paid was 5 gunshots. After the battle, he hurriedly bandaged his wounds. In total, he had lost 110 HP, more than 1/3 of his total. After leaving combat, his HP would recover at an extremely slow rate. Fighting head-on is too disadvantageous. If only there were active skills. Basic combat and basic shooting only provide passive bonuses. Han Xiao shook his head and took out his walkie-talkie. Team C, respond quickly. What's the situation? Han Xiao coughed and said, cough, cough. Team C has suffered heavy casualties. We've already trapped the target in the laboratory. The target has been shot. Quick, send reinforcements. As he spoke, he picked up the submachine gun on the ground and casually fired, creating the illusion of a fierce exchange of fire. Okay, hold on. Team B is on the way. The other party did not suspect anything. Han Xiao's taciturn persona was deeply ingrained in their minds. They did not expect Han Xiao to use such a tactic. Han Xiao tied the remaining 3 grenades together and hung them on the door of the lab. A ring was attached to a thin string to make a simple booby trap. The moment the door was opened, it would detonate. Then, he placed the table horizontally as cover and quickly found a large number of magazines on the bodies around him. He reloaded the 3 submachine guns and placed them next to him. Then, he fired at random to create the illusion of a firefight. He crouched behind cover and waited for the enemy to break in. Noisy footsteps approached from afar, and with a bang, the door was kicked open. Boom! A violent explosion came as expected. The flames expanded, and the shockwave sent glass, bullet shells, and rocks flying. Screams of pain could be heard. Han Xiao did not say anything. He picked up a submachine gun in each hand and rushed to the door under the cover of the dust. He stuck the gun out of the door and fired at the walls on both sides. The smoke blocked his vision, and the dull sound of bullets hitting flesh could be heard continuously. Only when the magazines were empty did the surroundings become quiet. The standard way to break in was for one person to kick the door while the others hid beside it. Although Team B was lucky enough to avoid the first round of grenades, they could not avoid the subsequent rounds of gunfire. Dozens of kill notifications appeared on the interface like a waterfall. Team B was almost completely wiped out. Only 3 guards were still breathing and lying in a pool of blood. When they saw Han Xiao walk out of the smoke, their eyes were wide open and filled with shock and astonishment. He even knew how to use booby traps. Was this still the low-profile and dull test subject 0? Han Xiao fired 3 shots and sent the 3 of them back to their homes. What was the explosion? What's the situation now? Team A's leader asked loudly. Han Xiao picked up a few guns and fired randomly. He pretended to be flustered and said, Team B was ambushed and is currently fighting with the enemy in the laboratory. Requesting backup, requesting backup. Team A, send backup immediately. Team A's leader was shocked. He led his team all the way down to the laboratory on the 3rd floor. Team A's leader was uneasy, feeling that he had missed something important. When they reached the 3rd floor, Team A's leader suddenly realized something. He hurriedly said, Everyone, be careful. 0 might have hacked into our communication network. From now on, follow my orders. The team members' expressions changed drastically. Only then did they consider the possibility that 0 had gotten hold of the walkie-talkie. It was because Han Zhao's previous image was too quiet that they had overlooked this loophole. If 0 had gotten hold of the walkie-talkie, then there was a chance that Team B's call for help was fake. From the beginning to the end, the other Team B members did not say a word. Team A's leader had an unbelievable thought. Could Team B and C have been wiped out by 0? He shuddered. If that was the case, did that not mean that 0 had single-handedly wiped out half of the base's defense forces? He did not want to believe this conjecture, but all the clues told him that no matter how unbelievable it was, this was the truth. He was almost certain that the Team B member from earlier was 0 in disguise. His goal was to lure Team A into a trap? Or was 0 just trying to send Team A away so that he could escape the base through the main gate? Team A's leader hurriedly said, Team D, is there anything wrong with the main gate? Not at the moment. Team A's leader heaved a sigh of relief. He could not be led by the nose by 0. More than half of the guards were dead, and the situation was out of control. It was no longer realistic to rely on the remaining people to eliminate 0. He had to inform Madame Hella immediately. Team A, listen up. Return to the main gate immediately. Team A's leader made a decision. He decided to gather everyone to guard the main gate and wait for reinforcements to arrive. This was the most reliable method. Chapter 10. Team A retraced their steps and met up with Team D at the entrance. Team B might have been wiped out. I'm going to call for backup. Guard the entrance. Team A's leader looked at the people present. There were a total of 31 guards, 31 guns aimed at the corridor. As long as 0 appeared, they would instantly tear him to pieces with a metal storm. Suddenly, Team A's leader felt that something was wrong. Wait, aren't we supposed to have 30 people? Beep, beep. The door lit up with a green light, and the entrance opened abruptly. Everyone turned around and saw an agent in black with a tactical backpack standing beside the entrance. He was holding a white card. His fingers pushed up the brim of his cap as he turned around and whistled happily at everyone. Bye-bye. The man pulled down the door lock and rolled on the ground, jumping out of the room before the door was locked. All the guards were petrified. They stood rooted to the ground, dumbfounded. Veins popped out on Team A's leader's forehead. The locked door seemed to be mocking him silently. When did 0 sneak in? The 80-centimeter thick alloy door slammed shut. Finally, he escaped. The long-awaited sunlight shone on his body. It was warm and comfortable, and the stuffy feeling in his chest slowly dissipated. He looked at the sky. It was about 4 or 5 in the afternoon. The star that radiated light and heat hung high in the sky. In the picture of white clouds and blue sky, he could vaguely see the outlines of several planets. Some were near, some were far. He could even see the crater of the nearest one. These planets were the source of the blue star's moonlight, refracting the star's light at night. Han Xiaoxin took a deep breath. The fresh air filled his nostrils. The smell of freedom made him feel relaxed. From the beginning to the end, Han Xiao did not plan to fight with all the guards. Even if the base's defense was at its weakest, whether he could win or not was secondary. If the number of guards was too high and they lost all hope, the sentinel guarding the entrance would immediately activate the door lock. Even if he turned into Rambo and killed all the guards in first blood, the moment the door was locked, the escape plan would be over. By then, it would be Han Xiao's turn to be stunned. After he pretended to be a member of Team B to lure Team A out, he took a clean uniform from the corpses on the ground, took off the lightweight mechanical arm, and put it in his tactical backpack. He hid in the corner between the second and third floor. It was a blind spot, and if one did not look carefully, it would be hard to notice him. Having stayed in a safe environment for too long, the guard's alertness was very low. Han Xiao was well aware of this. Team A's attention was all on providing support. After hurriedly turning the corner, Han Xiao quietly followed behind Team A. He kept a low profile and pressed the brim of his cap very low. This group of Team A guards obviously did not expect Han Xiao to be so daring, who would count their teammates for no reason. For a moment, no one noticed that there was an additional person at the back of the group. Therefore, Han Xiao followed Team A to the entrance safely. When the guards were distracted, he quietly approached the entrance and locked all the guards in the base. This was a risky move. If anything went wrong, he would be shot to death by dozens of guns at close range. If he had a choice, he would not have taken such a risk. Unfortunately, his original plan had been foiled by Baltar, so he had no choice but to take the risk. He was willing to give it a shot with a success rate of about 50%. Surrounded by abandoned farms, Han Xiao found the tracks left by the SUVs. Following the tracks, he found a garage. A few black bulletproof SUVs were lying quietly in the garage. The keys were hanging by the garage door for easy access. Of course, it was convenient for him now. Reinforcements might appear at any time. I can't stay here for long. Escaping from the lab was only the first step. The Germinal organization would definitely come after him. He threw the backpack with the mechanical arm on the passenger's seat, took the keys, and started the car. He touched the steering wheel. Oh, it's made of real leather. He stepped on the accelerator, and the high-horsepower engine roared. The off-road vehicle broke through the fence like a wild dog and rushed into the forest. Han Xiao was completely clueless about the surrounding terrain, so he could only identify one direction. On the Black Harrier helicopter, Hella's phone rang. She frowned and picked it up. "Who is it?" "Manager Hella. Something happened at the base. Zero lost control and killed more than 30 guards, Deputy Manager Baltar, and Professor Lin Weixian. He destroyed the lab data." The leader of Team A sounded depressed. They would have to take the blame for their failure. If they did not inform the manager, not only would their future be in danger, but their lives would be in danger as well. Not to mention, they were still locked up in the base. If no one came to open the door, would they have to stare at each other until the end of time? Hila was shocked. "Are you playing a prank on me?" She had personally brainwashed Zero. Was Zero faking it at that time? There was no problem with the brainwashing effect of the other test subjects. Had she been deceived from the beginning? Hella hurriedly contacted the leader and repeated what the leader of Team A had said. The leader's breathing became heavy, as if he was suppressing his anger. "Turn around immediately and chase after him." Hella was reluctant. "My sister..." "Shut up. You have no right to bargain with me." Hella bit her lip and shouted at the pilot. "Turn around and return to the base." "Executive Hella, the plane needs to land and refuel. Hurry up." The OWL squad received their leader's order halfway. A few off-road vehicles turned around and opened the gate of the base from the outside. The agents who had been locked inside walked out with their faces covered in dirt. Looking at the pitiful state of the base, Number One's face was filled with shock and anger, his expression mixed with disbelief. He pointed at the leader of Team A and said angrily, "There are dozens of you, and you can't even stop one person. Is there a traitor?" He did not believe that he could do it, but he also did not believe that Han Xiao could do it. The faces of the guards changed drastically. No one could bear the accusation of betraying the organization. "All right, stop arguing." The leader ordered us to chase after him. Silver Knife interrupted the conversation. His face was cold as he led the Owl Squad into the car. "Wait, our test subject team will go with us," Number 1 yelled as he led his team members onto the other 2 vehicles. He had always thought that he was the perfect test subject and was extremely disdainful of Han Xiao, who had a code name before him. However, Han Zhao's battle record had inevitably caused him to fall into a state of self-denial. Therefore, he felt very frustrated. Number 1 felt that only by defeating Han Xiao could he prove his value to the organization. From a beginning to the end, the Owl Squad did not pay any attention to the surviving guards. Their indifferent attitude showed that they also thought that they could not stop Han Xiao. They were a bunch of trash. The guards were indignant. When they really meet Zero, they will know what they are facing. This group of guards actually hoped that Zero would succeed in escaping. If even the Owl Squad failed, then wouldn't their mistake seem excusable? Night fell. Through the gaps in the forest, Han Xiao could see the outlines of several asteroids in the sky, emitting blue radiance. The moons of different shapes were light and mysterious. The galaxy was bright and beautiful. Every planet and galaxy had a different environment and style. In Han Zhao's previous life, there were professional casual players who liked interstellar travel. They took pictures of the beautiful scenery of different planets and made them into albums, which were sold out on the official forums. At this time, the moonlight could not penetrate the forest, so Han Zhao's vision was very unclear. Han Xiao drove carefully, afraid that he would hit a tree. The night was not good for him. The sound of the engine would expose his position, and he could not drive too fast in the dark. Driving at night is not good. "I'll just walk." Han Xiao decided to abandon the car. He stopped the car, pulled out the key, and turned off the engine. Without the sound of the engine, the silence of the forest instantly surrounded him. The shadows of the trees under the moonlight were like ghostly hands. The atmosphere was eerie. You have received 5 military compressed biscuits and 3 mineral water. There were a few bottles of water and military compressed biscuits in the trunk of the car. Han Xiao put them all in his bag and walked into the forest alone. The car left a rut on the dirt road in the forest. There was no way for him to erase the tracks, so he could only get out of the car and run in another direction. Without the car, the darkness of the night instantly became his protective color. His body was very tired, and he did not have much stamina left. However, Han Xiao did not dare rest. He was not completely out of danger yet. Virum, Virum. After walking for a while, he heard the roar of a car behind him. He hurriedly hid behind a tree and peeked his head out to look. He saw 6 headlights flickering in the forest and driving in 3 different directions. 3 cars of enemies. Han Xiao pursed his lips. He had abandoned the car and run, causing the enemies to lose their trail and have to split up to chase after him. Han Xiao sneakily moved in another direction. Suddenly, a gunshot broke the silence of the night. Han Xiaoxin was alerted and fell to the ground. His shoulder was burning with pain. He turned around and saw a bullet graze his right shoulder. There was a hole in the trunk of a tree more than 10 meters away. A car stopped more than 300 meters away. The entire Owl Third Squad got out of the car. They were all wearing black goggles. The one who fired the shot was the captain, Silver Knife. He was holding a sniper rifle in his hand. 6 laser eyes? Han Xiao was shocked by their outfits. It's night vision goggles. Han Xiao cursed his bad luck and quickly hid behind a tree. You have been grazed by an SWP sniper rifle on your right shoulder. You have received 18 damage. Being grazed by a sniper rifle alone was comparable to being hit by a pistol. You have entered combat mode. Based on your level, you have received detailed information about the enemy. Night Owl Agent. Level 15 Profession. Special Agent LV10. Elite Special Agent LV5 Attributes. 18 STR, 15 DX, 25 Yindi, 10 INT, 3 MYS, 8 C Che, 1 LUK Energy, 0 Energy Rank, 40 HP, 350 Abilities, Well-Trained, increases base HP by 100, Ignore Pain. Combat Effectiveness does not decrease due to injury. Skills, LV4 Basic Combat, LV5 Basic Shooting, LV2 precision shooting, LV1 sniper, team leader configuration, equipment frowny face SWP sniper rifle, team leader's equipment grade, gray, large caliber sniper. Rifle, attack 70 to 88, fire rate 0. 5/S, magazine capacity 5, damage level 30, requirements. LVL1 sniper, thermal vision night vision goggles, grade, gray, essential for night battles type 73 Wasp pistol, grade, gray, small caliber portable firearm, attack, 28-35, fire rate, 1. 1/S, magazine capacity, 10 damage, 13 type G fragment grenade, X3 deals 50 to 80 damage in a 20-meter radius. Has a chance to deal multiple damage. Energy rank 45 Kala light bulletproof vest, grade, gray, range defense 10 to 12, durability 50 alloy dagger, grade, gray, attack 8 to 12, length 0. 28M. These 6 owl agents were all elite enemies. Although their levels were lower than his, they were all Tier 2 fighters who specialized in combat. Their attributes were very high, and they were fully armed. Chapter 11. The lightweight mechanical arm with only 130 durability left, the enhanced Type 73 Wasp, a right N9 submachine gun, and 15 clips of ammo. These were all that Han Shao had. Compared to the well-equipped Owl Squad, it was so shabby that it made his heart ache. Bang! The sniper rifle fired again. A hot bullet passed through the tree he was hiding in and almost hit him. Han Shao groaned inwardly. The enemy had night vision goggles, and he could only determine the enemy's position through the muzzle flash. The sniper rifle was too powerful. With his HP, he would die after 3 shots. He still had 18 AP. Without thinking, Han Shao put 14 into Yendi and 4 into Street. The former would save his life, and the latter would ensure that he could deal a crushing blow to the Owl Squad. He had already realized that he had to avoid the enemy's strong points. Although close combat was dangerous, there was a chance. In this situation, trying to escape would only expose his weaknesses. The enemy had night vision goggles. Unless he killed all of them, there was no way to escape. His STR had reached 29, and with the mechanical arms plus 10 judgment effect, it was just enough to form a crushing blow. His END had increased to 36, and his HP had increased to 460. After adding the AP, his HP had increased to 140, which was very important. He had regained some HP during the escape, and now his HP was close to 400. Han Shao had observed for a while. The Owl Squad had surrounded him in a fan-shaped formation to prevent him from escaping. They did not form close support. The enemy's sparse formation plus the forest environment plus the night equals 5 to 8 seconds of support interval. In other words, he only had a few seconds of close combat time. If he could not kill the target he chose, he would definitely be in a desperate situation. He had killed a lot of enemies in the base. Including his previous savings, he had a total of 116,000 EXP left. There was nothing to hesitate about in a life and death battle. He put all of his EXP into close combat. Grappling has been leveled up to LVL5. Increased parry and counterattack by 7%. Unarmed attack by 10%. Basic combat has been leveled up to LVL8. Increased unarmed attack by 8%. Basic combat has reached level 8. Grappling has reached level 3. Please choose one of the following 3 advanced skills. Special combat, Jiu-Jitsu, Iron Fist. Special combat focused on instantaneous bursts of power, assassination, and the use of weapons. Jiu-Jitsu focused on locking techniques and subduing. Steel Fist focused on increasing the strength and resistance of punches and kicks. They represented 3 different directions of development. What Han Shao needed the most right now was explosive power. Advanced skill acquired, Special Combat LVL1. Increased critical strike rate by 6%, unarmed attack by 4%. After using up all his experience, his melee attack power had increased by nearly 15%. Han Zhao's fighting ability had suddenly improved. He felt that he could instinctively use all kinds of fighting moves very skillfully. It's a pity that I don't have any combat-type active skills that can use energy. Han Xiao felt that it was a pity. In the early stages of the mechanic class, there were very few active skills, so it was very difficult for them to fully utilize their energy. Attribute bonuses were not the main purpose of energy. The true purpose of energy was to use active skills. Expending energy could allow one to quickly recover energy, which was in line with the setting where energy was extracted from one's cells. When to use skills, when to recover energy, and how not to waste any energy were all details that could affect the outcome of a battle. Han Xiao put on the lightweight mechanical arm. Like a hibernating leopard, he took a deep breath to fill his lungs. Oxygen passed through the alveoli into the blood vessels, passed through the cell membranes, and entered the red blood cells. By increasing the oxygen content of the blood, he adjusted his condition to the peak. The next moment, Han Xiao suddenly exerted force in his legs and pounced forward like a leopard. He lowered his body and sprinted toward the target he had chosen long ago, the owl agent at the very left of the enemy formation, who was closest to him. The moment he jumped out, gunshots rang out. 6 Jason submachine guns immediately focused on him and swept across the area, blowing up pieces of soil. The forest environment was a natural barrier. Han Xiao raised his mechanical arm to block the side of his body and ran around the trees, dodging a large number of bullets. His other hand was holding a submachine gun to suppress the firepower of the owl agent. The faint, burnt smell of the bullets rubbing against the air rushed into his nose. 3 seconds. Han Xiao rushed to the front of the target and swung the submachine gun out, knocking the muzzle of the owl agent. The mechanical arm brazenly struck the owl agent's arms, and the sound of bones cracking could be heard. The bones of the arms collided with the metal, and it was obvious that the former was at a disadvantage. The owl agent endured the pain and pulled out his gun, aimed at Han Zhao's head, and fired. Han Zhao's agility was not just for show. He reacted quickly and grabbed the muzzle of the gun with his steel-like hand. With a bang, the bullet was caught in his hand. Han Zhao's right hand clamped the owl agent's arm that was holding the gun under his armpit and pulled hard to break the enemy's center of gravity. The owl agent stumbled and fell into his arms. At this time, Han Xiao took the opportunity to quickly raise his knee and heavily hit the enemy's lower body. He could clearly feel the 2 balls deforming under the pressure of his knee. You have hit the enemy's vital point, 2 times the critical hit damage. The enemy will be paralyzed for 2 seconds. He could not see the owl agent's expression under the goggles, but the scream told him that this attack was very effective. At this critical moment, Han Xiao did not care about whether or not this move was insidious or not. While the enemy was paralyzed, he madly launched a series of knee strikes on the enemy's lower body. Dong dong dong. 78. 81. 84. The 2 balls were jumping up and down. I'm sorry, brother. I can feel your sadness. I didn't design the bulletproof vest. The enemy's HP drained like water, and Han Zhao's mechanical arm elbowed the enemy's weak throat. The night owl agent fell limply to the ground, and the stench of blood filled his nostrils. Han Xiao guessed that there was a mix of white, yellow, and red in his pants. Before Han Xiao could celebrate, he felt a sharp pain in his back. He hurriedly lay down and hid behind a big tree beside him. You have been shot in the back by an SWP sniper rifle. You have received 68 damage. You have been hit by a large caliber bullet and are in a moderate bleeding state. You will lose 3 health points per second for 15 seconds. Please bandage your wounds as soon as possible. With so many enemies around, there was no time to bandage him. Han Xiao was in so much pain that his face turned pale. This shot had taken away a lot of his health points. The attack was too strong. Damn it. The remaining 5 owl agents were obviously enraged by Han Zhao's brazen act of killing their comrade. They quickly closed in on him and kept suppressing him. Wood chips flew everywhere, and Han Xiao could not even poke his head out. Han Xiao looted all the equipment from the owl agent's corpse and quickly put on the bulletproof vest. This should be able to block 1 or 2 shots for him. The most important thing was the 3G-type grenades. These were good stuff. He flicked his hand and threw one out. Boom! The sound of the explosion rang out, and the enemy hurriedly looked for cover. The suffocating suppressive fire suddenly stopped. Shoot me! Han Xiao was full of resentment. He threw out another grenade, and the 5 owl agents who were about to get up quickly lay down again. Again, the third black object was thrown out, and the 5 of them subconsciously lay down. After waiting for 2 seconds, they found that it did not explode. They looked at it carefully and found that it was not a grenade, but a rock. The 5 of them immediately understood that they had fallen into a trap. At this time, Han Xiao took the opportunity to rush out and spray with his submachine gun. He did not care that the gun barrel was overheating, and almost instantly, he emptied the magazine. One of the owl agents who was hiding in the bushes was turned into a sieve by him. Han Xiao threw away the submachine gun and turned around to shoot another grenade. Once again, the explosion stopped the remaining 4 from retaliating. This time, he pounced out like a tiger and knocked over an owl agent in another direction. However, this time, he was not unscathed. Silver Knife opened fire in the chaos, and the submachine gun hit his calf, injuring him again. Han Xiao gritted his teeth. The injury to his calf affected his movement speed. He struggled to drag the owl agent who was knocked down by him to the back of a tree and quickly killed him. With his upgraded combat ability, these owl agents could not withstand a single blow. There were only 3 enemies left. He only had half of his HP left. Facing such a dangerous situation, Han Xiao became calmer and calmer. His mind quickly appeared and eliminated one strategy after another. He had experienced hundreds of battles, and he understood himself and the enemy. No matter what, panic was useless. If I'm not wrong, the enemy will. Han Xiao's eyes suddenly shrank, and he knew that it was not good. Yin Dao's face was ashen. At first, he didn't even put this test subject in his eyes. He didn't expect to lose half of his men here. He put away his contempt and also lost his patience. He shouted, "Blow him up!" The remaining 3 used their grenades. They drew a beautiful arc and landed behind the tree where Han Xiao was hiding. Boom! The expanding flames, the roaring sound of the explosion, and the flying dust. When all of this was over, everything returned to silence. Is he dead? I'm not sure. Silver Knife shook his head and made a tactical gesture to move forward. The 3 of them crouched down and slowly moved towards the explosion range. When they arrived behind the tree, a charred corpse was quietly lying on the ground, emitting white smoke. From the tattered uniform, they could recognize that it was Zero. Finally killed him. One of the agents let out a sigh of relief. Chapter 12. Before Silver Knife's 2 companions could react, a spinning bullet was fired from the forest not far away. It accurately hit the 3 grenades hidden under the corpse's palm. In such a close-range explosion, the 2 owl agents were instantly injured by multiple grenades, and the dazzling flames engulfed the 2 of them. You have dealt 60 explosive damage to the enemy. X8, you killed Agent Owl. 1,500 EXP gained. X2, the grass rustled as Han Xiao stood up. He was currently in a very sorry state. Half of his body was charred black, and he only had around 50 HP left. He was still bleeding, and his stamina was almost empty. His HP was like a candle flickering in the wind, and could be extinguished at any time. His vision was dark, and exhaustion hit his nerves like a tide. He forced himself not to faint. Han Xiao used the corpse of the Nightingale agent he killed as a meat shield to save his life from the explosion of the grenades. Enduring the pain, he covered the corpse with his own clothes and used the 3 newly obtained grenades to set up a trap. Then, he hurriedly hid in the bushes and held his breath like a hunter. Only Silver Saber noticed the problem and managed to escape. Blood blurred his vision. Han Xiao was in a very bad state. His hands and feet were trembling uncontrollably, but the last enemy was in perfect condition. He immediately realized that he could not give the enemy a chance to pull away. As soon as Yin Dao got up, a bloody black shadow rushed in front of him. "You are seeking your own death. Indao was furious. He pulled out a dagger from his waist and ruthlessly stabbed forward. The searchlights of the aircraft illuminated the forest, and the Black Harrier lowered a rope ladder. Hela followed the ladder and landed on the ground. The area under her feet was full of bullet holes and burn marks. It was obvious that there had been a fierce battle. The test subject team that arrived first collected the scattered blood on the field. Number one's face was livid. He clenched his fists and didn't say a word. Hela looked at the 6 corpses in front of her, her face full of shock. The Night Owl third squad was completely annihilated. Zero had disappeared without a trace. The result of the battle was simply unbelievable. Hela was in a daze for a few minutes. Corpses can talk. Hela squats down to observe. 2 of them were killed by the explosion, 1 was shot to death, and the other 3 were killed in close combat. Silver Knife's goggles had been shattered, and the shards had pierced into his eyeballs. He had died a miserable death. She reached out and pinched Silver Knife's body. It was soft to the touch. Most of the bones were broken, especially the pelvis and lower body. These injuries were obviously caused by a close combat expert. No matter how she looked at it, it did not seem like Zero had done it. She was the clearest about Han Zhao's close combat skills. He was just a little better than a normal person. No, he might not even be as strong as a normal person. Combat was not something that could be learned quickly. Every one of these special agents had trained for more than 10 years, and the Owl Squad was even more elite. Even if Han Zhao had been hiding his true strength at the very most, he had only trained for half a year. If the truth was not right in front of her eyes, Hela would not have believed it. Could it be that he's the same as me and has also awakened his Esper ability? Hela felt a little regretful. If she had paid more attention to Han Zhao, she might have found out a long time ago. When Zero escaped, she was coincidentally not at the base. This made Hela very depressed. If she had been there, she was 100% confident that she could have taken down Zero. Was this luck, or did Zero purposely seize the opportunity? The Owl Squad's equipment is gone, but we found this thing. An agent walked over with a lightweight mechanical arm. At this time, the mechanical arm was stained with blood. A dagger was stuck between the gears, piercing through the engine and breaking it. Bring it back. A day later, a large number of members of the Germinal organization arrived at the base. They gathered the surveillance footage that had not been lost and collected clues. The leader of the Germinal organization was dressed in a black trench coat, a black mask, and black gloves. His whole body was covered in black, and he looked like he had run out of the set of Detective XX. Even in the organization, there were no more than 5 people who knew the real face of the leader. "Where's Zero?" The leader asked concisely. "We lost him." Number 1 gritted his teeth and said, "If only I had a little more time." The leader suddenly raised his hand. This action contained impatience and anger, so Number 1 could only shut up. The leader was very angry. A few days ago, Zero was still a useless, abandoned pawn in his eyes. However, not long after, this abandoned pawn had caused him a huge loss and successfully escaped. A failed test subject killed 30 armed guards, destroyed the experiment data, annihilated a team of elite night owls, and even made me lose Lin Wei-Xian. In the end, he managed to escape. Am I listening to a fairy tale? Everyone looked at each other. The leader said coldly, "I want to know, when did Zero start to have a will to resist? Why did he have such combat power?" The researcher hurriedly said, "We have studied the surveillance footage for half a year and have come up with some guesses." "Speak." Zero's behavior changed greatly before and after the experiment. According to the report provided by the team that captured the human raw materials, Zero's original name was Xiao Han, the 3rd son of the 2nd leader of the Overmera family. Everyone was shocked. The Overmera family, a famous warlord family, a partner of the Theseus kingdom. The human raw materials for the experiment were mostly prisoners and wilderness wanderers. How did they capture someone with such a background? The leader was surprised. The son of the 2nd leader of the Overmera? What happened? According to our investigation, Xiao Han is the most ordinary son of the 2nd leader of the Overmera. He has not awakened his strength, nor does he have outstanding leadership skills. His personality is very weak. The researcher flipped through the report. We found Xiao Han among the corpses on the battlefield. According to our investigation, Xiao Han was following his brother Xiao Hai's team when they were escorting a batch of supplies. They were ambushed midway. Continue. At that time, Xiao Hai was the commander of the team. The target of the ambushers was not the supplies, but to kill Xiao Hai. Xiao Hai is the rising star of the Overmera family. If there are no accidents, he will inherit the position of the second leader of the Overmera. According to our informant, this ambush was the result of an internal struggle. The cause was that someone wanted to eliminate the second leader's successor. Xiao Hai forced Xiao Han to change into his own clothes as bait. They ran in different directions. In the end, Xiao Han was hit by a cannon, and Xiao Hai escaped safely. The leader frowned. Our informant knows so much. Xiao Hai did not hide the details, including the act of forcing Xiao Han. He was fearless. Xiao Han's death did not cause his family to be dissatisfied with Xiao Hai. The second leader of the Overmera said, "It is enough as long as Xiao Hai is safe." You know, the Overmera family values power. Xiao Han's position in the family is dispensable. His brothers and sisters did not seem to care about his death at all. After that, we accidentally found Xiao Han, who was not completely dead. The life and death of the original body was like a small wave. No one cared about it. In the eyes of the Overmera family, exchanging an incompetent son for the survival of an excellent successor was an acceptable price. The benefits outweighed the feelings. Han Xiao did not have these memories. When he transmigrated, the memory of the original body had been violently wiped out by the germinal organization. The leader sneered, "Weakness is the original sin. Incompetent people are not worthy of pity. I want to know what happened to him now." The researcher said, "We deduced that the Valkyrie experiment caused a mutation in Zero. The effect may be beyond our imagination. He not only gained mechanical talent, but also an extraordinary intelligence. Zero showed no harm for half a year after the experiment, so there's a 90% chance that it was a disguise. Since half a year ago, he had been planning to escape." Hela could not help but interject, "You mean that the brainwashing did not work on him?" "I'm afraid so." Hela's expression was vexed. The researcher continued, "Let me ask you, why would a human subject whose memory was wiped out suddenly have the consciousness to resist and escape? There is only one possibility, and that is that the experiment helped him regain his memory. However, according to the investigation, Zero did not have extraordinary abilities in the past. Since he is so cunning, it means that not only did he regain his memory, but he also awakened some strange personality. This is the most reasonable explanation. Can you guarantee that?" The leader's tone was cold. "No." The researcher's mouth was bitter. Who knew what was going on with Zero? This was just the most reasonable guess. Number one could not help but say, "Could it be because of luck?" The leader stared at him as if he was looking at a fool. "If you can replicate Zero's results with luck, I'll let you sit in the leader's seat." By the way, the guards brought back the exoskeleton mechanical arm used by Zero. The researcher took out the report and exclaimed, "Although the technology is very crude, it is very innovative. It is estimated that most of Zero's combat strength came from this machine. The weapons development department is happy to imitate and improve it. Of course, this will require a lot of money, and the weapons department is requesting for funding." Finally, there was good news, and the leader's mood was slightly better. "Money is not a problem as long as they can give us the finished product." The researcher nodded and returned to the original topic. No matter the reason, Zero has endured for half a year. Coupled with the mechanical talent and combat strength he has displayed, he is undoubtedly a meticulous and extremely dangerous person. Everyone's heart trembled. Zero is a special example of an experiment with high research value. If we can obtain his body, even if it is dead, we can further improve the experiment data. When sorting out the previous surveillance videos, Zero's half a year of disguise and such patience made everyone shudder. All the researchers felt fear from the bottom of their hearts, but at the same time, Every researcher had a fanatical desire to study Han Xiao. Number 1 noticed the yearning in the researcher's eyes, and his face suddenly became hazy. What he could not tolerate the most was losing to Zero. When he was born, Number 1 knew that he was the second test subject, and there was someone else whose code name was before him. Therefore, he had always regarded Han Xiao as an imaginary enemy. When he thought that he had finally stepped on Han Xiao, reality gave him a slap in the face. The leader suddenly remembered something. By the way, before we find out the hidden dangers of the Valkyrie potion, stop all experiments and brainwash all the existing test subjects. I don't want to give birth to another Zero. Number 1's eyes were full of anger. He felt that his loyalty had been insulted. He shouted, "I am willing to lead the team to hunt down Zero." The leader looked at him. He had high hopes for the test subject team. He slowly said, "Can you do it? I promise to complete the mission." Number 1 felt the leader's attention, and his fighting spirit was high. He loudly made a military promise. Chapter 13. The sun shone through the trees, leaving mottled shadows on the ground. A hand pushed aside the bushes, revealing a haggard face. Han Xiao had been on the run for 7 days. He had spent 7 days living in the jungle, eating military rations and water. All that was left in his backpack was a pile of equipment from the Night Owl squad. At the cost of the destruction of his lightweight mechanical arm, he managed to block Silver Knife's dagger. What happened next was logical. Even if he only had a sliver of HP left, he could still beat Silver Knife, who was not good at close combat. How could Flying Dragon Rider lose? Even Poison Healer himself would not lose. Anyway, he had the blueprint, and as long as he had the materials, he could rebuild the equipment. It was too common for mechanics to damage their equipment in battle. The medical conditions in the jungle were poor. Fortunately, his endurance was high enough, so he did not have to worry about the wound getting infected. He endured the pain and dug out the bullet, and the wound would slowly heal. The wound caused by the sniper rifle was a little troublesome. The bullet was stuck in the gap between his shoulder blades. In order to dig out the bullet, Han Xiao was in so much pain that it took him half an hour to recover. The scene of Second Old Man scraping off bones to treat his wounds and watching spring and autumn did not suit Han Xiao at all. Along the way, with the blessing of Lady Luck, he did not encounter any ferocious beasts. The few long-eared rabbits he encountered all ended up in his stomach. The beasts in Blue Star were very ferocious, and there were even some intelligent beasts. In history, they had attacked cities many times. Some of the stronger beasts, such as the amphibious whale elephant, were dozens of meters in length, width, and height. They could even destroy a city on their own. Although Han Xiao remembered the map of Blue Star, he did not know where he was. He could only learn from Kwafu and run in the direction of the rising sun. At night, he would sleep on the tree. He would be woken up by insects 7 or 8 times in a night, more often than at night. He deeply understood that mosquitoes were the most annoying creatures in the world. When can I get out of this forest? Han Xiao was panting. At this time, a camp appeared in the distance. Wood, cement, and scrap metal formed a strangely shaped fence and spikes. This was a simple defensive measure. There were dozens of felt tents in the camp, and wisps of smoke rose from them. This was clearly a very common wanderer settlement in Blue Star. Han Xiao was overjoyed. He was in desperate need of supplies. After walking a few dozen meters forward, Han Xiao's expression suddenly changed, and he quickly retreated. The dust on the ground in front of him surged, and suddenly a thick rope net rose up. Thin metal pieces were tied to the net. This was a dangerous knife net trap. Fortunately, he reacted quickly. Otherwise, there would be a pile of holes on his body. This guy actually dodged it. A long-haired young man walked out from behind a tree. He was wearing a rogue outfit made of various animal skins. He looked at Han Xiao maliciously and pointed a shotgun at Han Xiao's head. He said arrogantly, "Stop. Don't move." The young man was obviously a resident of the settlement. Han Xiao did not want to cause any conflict, so he raised his hands. "I'm just a passerby." "A passerby?" The long-haired youth noticed Han Zhao's bulging bag. His eyes were filled with greed. What do you have in your bag? Take them all out. Seeing this, Han Xiao sighed inwardly. He had probably been robbed. No wonder the knife net trap was about the size of a human body. It was used to catch people. In times of chaos, human lives were cheap. Most rogues were people who refused to join the Six Nations. The harsh environment in the wilderness had cultivated their greedy hyena-like nature. It was common for them to kill people to steal resources. Are you deaf? Take them out. The long-haired youth scolded as he approached. He pointed the shotgun at Han Zhao's forehead. His bag was full of guns and ammunition, and they were all standard equipment of the German organization. How could he show them? Han Xiao was indifferent. Don't you understand what I said? Do you believe that I won't CK you over in one shot? The long-haired youth pulled the bolt of the gun fiercely. At this moment, Han Xiao moved. He was as fast as lightning, and he raised his elbow and struck the long-haired youth in the chest. The long-haired youth screamed and flew backward. Han Xiao used his other hand to snatch the shotgun from the long-haired youth. T, I've met a tough nut. The long-haired youth clutched his chest and panicked. He crawled backward on all fours, wanting to get as far away from this vicious person as possible. Han Xiao untied the knife net trap, pulled out a thick rope, and tied the long-haired young man to the tree. He then picked up a shotgun and sized it up. The gun was crudely made, and the barrel was crooked. It would explode with a single shot. Using such a thing to rob people was purely idiotic. However, this also proved that this young man had never killed anyone before. He was just bluffing. Seeing Han Xiao pick up the gun, the long-haired youth panicked and begged for mercy. Big brother, I was blind. Please forgive me. Han Xiao slapped him on the head and yelled, Now you know you're wrong. The long-haired youth did not have any backbone. He hurriedly said, I was wrong. What was wrong? The long-haired youth hesitated for a moment before carefully asking, Should I have brought an extra gun? Han Xiao was so angry that he laughed. You're quite King naughty. Please be magnanimous and let me go like a fart. The long-haired youth cried. CK off. I don't have a fart as big as yours. Han Xiao raised the gun and knocked the long-haired youth unconscious. He shook his head helplessly. This person was a resident of the settlement. He still needed to enter the settlement to buy food and water. He did not want to cause more trouble by killing people, so he could only tie him up and knock him unconscious. Count yourself lucky, Han Xiao muttered. After trekking for half an hour, Han Xiao finally entered the settlement. The residents here looked at him with vigilance. The wilderness was dangerous, and the wilderness wanderers were xenophobic. Although outsiders were rare, it was not unprecedented. Therefore, Han Xiao was not surrounded like a monkey in a zoo. The lifestyle of the wilderness wanderers was similar to that of the gypsies, and they often migrated. Beside each tent, there was a small pickup truck covered with a dust-proof cloth. These pickup trucks were basically modified vehicles, and they were covered with rust. Some of them did not even have shells installed, and their skeletons were exposed to the air. Each pickup truck represented a family. This settlement was not big, with only a few dozen families. However, as small as a sparrow may be, it had all the essentials. Han Xiao successfully found the market. A bearded white man was doing business on the back of the pickup truck. Outsider. The bearded merchant glanced at Han Xiao coldly. Do you know the rules here? What rules? We only accept barter. That's good. I don't have a single cent on me. I need a map, 3 buckets of water, and 5 kilograms of food. Meat jerky and bread will do. Han Xiao took out a pile of bullets from his bag. I want to pay with these. Bullets? The bearded merchant's eyes lit up. He subconsciously looked at Han Xiao's bulging backpack, and a greedy look appeared on his face. Bullets were hard currency in the wilderness. All wanderers needed bullets, and the process of making bullets was more complicated than the homemade guns. Even if a small group of wanderers could make bullets, the production rate was very low. Every shot was 1 less bullet. 150 bullets, the bearded merchant said. Han Xiao's face darkened. You're asking for a sky-high price. The things he wanted were just daily supplies. According to the market price, it would not exceed 100. Even if he considered the scarcity of resources in the wilderness, the premium would not exceed 500. As for the bullets, one bullet would cost at least 3, and these were the lowest quality bullets. Every brass bullet Han Shao gave was high-quality ammunition produced in the assembly line. The shells were shiny, new, and exquisite. 10 bullets were not expensive, and 150 bullets would cost at least 1,500. Han Shao only brought 300 bullets, and the bearded merchant wanted half of them. This was clearly a ripoff. Don't buy it if you can. The bearded merchant lowered his head and rubbed his fingernails with an expression of, "I'll eat you up." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.